The morning sun filtered through the worn curtains of a modest home in Kingston, Jamaica. Maxwell sat cross-legged on the floor of his bedroom, his fingers dancing across the controller as he navigated his avatar through a virtual battleground. His headset hummed with the sounds of his teammates' voices, each shout and command driving his focus deeper into the game. For Maxwell, the world outside melted away when he gamed. Here, he wasn't just a boy struggling to fit in. He was a hero, a champion, a contender. Maxwell. His mother's voice shattered his concentration like a rogue grenade in the game. You still depend that game? You not clean your room, or even start your homework yet? Maxwell groaned, muting his mic. Just 5 more minutes, mummy, he called back, already knowing the storm that would follow. Keona burst into the room, her face a mix of annoyance and exhaustion. 5 more minutes turn into hours. Look pan your grades. Look pan your room. You tink dis gaming thing ago put food pon table. Maxwell shrank under her words, but held onto his controller tightly. But mummy me good at it. People make money from gaming. Money. She laughed bitterly, her hands akimbo. Who in Jamaica make money from dat? Stop fool yourself and find summit ng sensible fi do. School first. The door slammed as she left, leaving Maxwell to sit in silence. For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. Was she right? Was he wasting his time? But then he glanced back at the screen, at the leaderboard where his name sat at the top. A small smile tugged at his lips. Dem just na see it yet, he murmured. That night, as the house quieted, Maxwell turned on his console again. He would prove her wrong, not out of spite, but to show her what she couldn't see yet. His future was in the game. The argument from earlier echoed in Maxwell's mind as he stared at the darkened screen of his console. Gaming wasn't just fun for him. It was his safe space, the only thing that made him feel alive and confident. Outside of games, life felt heavy. At school, teachers scolded him for his wandering attention, and classmates teased him for not fitting in. But in his gaming world, he was untouchable, a leader among players. Still, Keona's words stung. Wasting your life, she had said, and Maxwell hated how those words clung to him. He couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't understand him or his dreams. The next day at school, Maxwell found himself sketching ideas for a new gaming setup during class. He imagined the perfect PC, glowing RGB lights, a comfortable chair, everything he would need to dominate tournaments. The teacher's voice droned on, but Maxwell's mind was miles away. When the bell rang, Maxwell rushed home, his heart racing with a new plan. If his mother didn't believe in gaming, he'd have to prove her wrong. He found an old laptop in the corner of the living room, wiped the dust from it, and booted it up. The machine was painfully slow, but it would have to do. He spent hours researching online gaming tournaments and stumbled upon a small competition that required no entry fee. The prize? $50. This could work, he thought, his excitement bubbling. He stayed up that night practicing for the tournament, the glow of the screen illuminating his determination. When Keona peeked into his room later, she sighed in frustration. Maxwell, she muttered under her breath, you better make this worth it. Unbeknownst to her, Maxwell was already laying the foundation for his first win, and the start of something much bigger than either of them could imagine. The day of the online tournament arrived, and Maxwell's palms were slick with sweat as he gripped his controller. The old laptop perched precariously on his desk hummed loudly, struggling to keep up with the demands of the game. Maxwell had barely slept the night before, replaying strategies in his mind and practicing his reflexes until the early hours of the morning. The tournament lobby filled with players from all over the world, their usernames flashing on the screen. Maxwell's in-game name, Silent Beast 876, stood out among them. It wasn't just a name, it was his identity, a nod to his quiet determination and his Jamaican roots. The match began, and Maxwell quickly fell into his zone. His fingers moved instinctively, weaving his character through danger while taking down opponents with precision. Every move was calculated, every decision deliberate. By the time the dust settled, Maxwell's team had won the first round. Between matches, a private message popped up on his screen. Nice moves, Silent Beast 876. Ever think about playing in a league? The message was from Cyber_Night, one of his opponents. Intrigued, Maxwell replied, League? What's that? They spent the next few minutes chatting between rounds. Cyber_Night explained the world of competitive gaming, teams, sponsorships, and tournaments that offered prize pools in the millions. Maxwell's eyes widened as he read the messages. This wasn't just a dream, it was a path. I think you've got what it takes, Cyber_Knight wrote. Ever heard of land tournaments? There's one coming up in Kingston next month. You should try out. Maxwell hesitated. He had never played in a live setting before, and the thought of stepping out of his small room and into the spotlight terrified him. But the allure of proving himself on a bigger stage was irresistible. As the final round of the tournament commenced, Maxwell fought harder than ever. His team clinched the win, and he earned his first prize, $50. It wasn't much, but as Maxwell stared at the notification on his screen, it felt like $1 million. That night, he messaged Cyber_Knight back. Tell me more about this land tournament. I'm in. The day of the tournament payout was a surreal moment for Maxwell. As he stared at the $50 prize in his online wallet, he couldn't help but grin. It wasn't the amount of money, it was the validation. He had turned his gaming skills into something tangible, something real. Maxwell rushed out of his room to show his mother. "Mummy, look. Me win," he exclaimed, holding up his phone with the proof of his earnings. Keona barely glanced at it. "Win what? $50? You see why I even buy half a textbook with dat." She sighed heavily. "Maxwell, me beg ya, stop waste your time." The excitement drained from his face, replaced with quiet frustration. "It's not about the money," he muttered, retreating to his room. Determined to keep the momentum going, Maxwell threw himself into practice. His conversations with Cyber_Knight became a lifeline. Cyber_Knight introduced him to the world of professional gaming and explained the importance of honing not just skills, but also discipline and teamwork. Don't just play. Study the game. Watch replays. Learn from the pros, Cyber_Knight advised during one of their late-night chats. Maxwell took the advice to heart. He spent hours watching gameplay videos, dissecting strategies, and practicing until his hands ached. He knew that $50 was just the beginning. Meanwhile, the upcoming land tournament in Kingston loomed closer. Maxwell scoured forums for tips on preparing for live events. He realized he needed to build confidence playing face-to-face with competitors. The thought made his stomach churn, but he refused to back down. With his small earnings, Maxwell bought a second-hand webcam and started streaming his practice sessions. To his surprise, a handful of viewers tuned in. "You've got potential, bro," one viewer commented during a stream. Maxwell smiled, his confidence growing. He wasn't just a boy with a controller anymore. He was a contender, ready to prove to everyone, including his mother, that gaming was his calling. The countdown to the Kingston Land tournament had begun, and Maxwell was both excited and terrified. Every spare moment was spent practicing, strategizing, and watching gameplay videos of top competitors. His confidence grew, but so did his nerves. This wasn't just about gaming anymore. It was about proving to himself and to his mother that his dreams weren't a waste of time. One evening, as Maxwell sat in his room analyzing his gameplay footage, Keona barged in. Her expression was a mix of exasperation and disbelief. "Maxwell," she said, holding up one of his school report cards. "This is what you doing with yourself. Your grades a drop, and all you care about is de foolish games." Maxwell glanced at the report card. It was bad, really bad. He had barely passed his last set of exams. "Mummy, me no mean fi slack off. Me just," he paused, struggling to find the right words. "Me trying fi mek something big with dis." "Something big?" "Maxwell, you a child. Who in Jamaica goin' take dis serious. You know see life rough? Stop fool yourself and do de right ting." Her voice cracked, the frustration evident. Maxwell clenched his fists, his face hot with anger. "Why you can't just believe in me? Me no want be like everybody else. Me know me can do dis." Keona sighed deeply and shook her head. "Believe in ya? Maxwell, me just no want see you waste your life. If you CYA manage your schoolwork, me done with dis gaming foolishness." That night, Maxwell's gaming console mysteriously vanished from his room. He searched everywhere, but it was gone. His heart sank as he realized what had happened. But Maxwell wasn't ready to give up. With determination burning inside him, he borrowed time at a nearby internet cafe, where he practiced late into the night. He worked twice as hard, determined to make his mark at the land tournament. If he was going to win, he'd have to do it without his mother's support, for now. The day of the land tournament had arrived, and Maxwell felt a mix of excitement and dread as he stood outside the venue. The building was buzzing with energy, filled with competitors and spectators, all clad in jerseys, headphones, and a buzz of anticipation. He glanced down at his worn-out sneakers and the old backpack that carried his essentials. He had borrowed the laptop and gear from a friend, and even though it wasn't top of the line, he was determined to make it work. Walking into the main hall, Maxwell's eyes were drawn to the massive screens showing live feeds of the games. Players yelled and cheered as they controlled their avatars, eyes locked on the glowing monitors. The air was electric, and for the first time, he felt the thrill of being surrounded by his peers, people who understood the game as deeply as he did. The tournament organizers called out the first round, and Maxwell's name was announced. His hands trembled as he sat at the setup designated for him. His opponent, a tall, confident-looking player named Razor Edge, shot him a smirk. "Hope you're ready to lose, kid," he sneered. Maxwell swallowed hard, his pulse hammering in his ears. The countdown began, and the screen lit up. As soon as the game started, Razor Edge was relentless, attacking with practiced precision. Maxwell stumbled at first, his nerves getting the better of him. He missed shots and faltered, feeling the sting of embarrassment. But then something clicked. He took a deep breath and remembered the countless hours of practice. He adjusted his strategy, fought back with everything he had, and soon the tide turned. His character dodged and struck, sending Razor Edge into a frenzy. The countdown timer dwindled to the last few seconds, and with one final, well-aimed shot, Maxwell secured the victory. The crowd erupted in cheers, some players turning to look in awe. Maxwell felt a rush of pride wash over him. This was it, his first real taste of victory on a live stage. Razor Edge looked at him, stunned, then nodded in respect. "Good match," he said, and for the first time, Maxwell felt like he belonged. The tournament wasn't over yet, but this was just the start. Maxwell knew that if he kept this up, he'd have his mother's respect. And more importantly, he'd be one step closer to proving he could make gaming his future. The tournament continued over the next 2 days, and Maxwell was on fire. He advanced through each round, surprising everyone, including himself. His fingers moved faster than ever, his concentration razor-sharp. The competition was fierce, but the young gamer's skills shone. Players who had once underestimated him now watched with wary eyes. The name Silent Beast 876 was whispered in conversations and displayed on the leaderboard as he climbed higher. By the final round, only 4 competitors remained. Maxwell was one of them, facing off against players who had been champions in previous tournaments. The grand prize was a substantial $1,000, but it was more than that. Winning this tournament would mean recognition, respect, and validation. It was his chance to show the world, and more importantly, his mother, that he wasn't just wasting time. The room buzzed with anticipation as Maxwell took his seat, his hands clammy with nerves. The screen in front of him lit up, showcasing his opponent. The Panther, a local gaming legend known for his ruthless strategies and lightning reflexes. The crowd's cheers were deafening, but Maxwell shut it out, focusing on the game. "Let's go, Silent Beast." Cyber_Knight's message popped up in the corner of his screen. He smiled, feeling the encouragement push him forward. The match began, and the Panther came at him with a flurry of attacks. But Maxwell had learned something crucial over the past few days: patience. He baited his opponent into a trap, luring him into a false sense of security before striking. The game turned into a back-and-forth battle, with each player pushing their skills to the limit. Time slowed as they fought, the tension thick in the room. Finally, with just seconds left on the clock, Maxwell made his move. His fingers pressed down on the keys with a force that made his hands ache. The Panther's avatar crumbled, and Maxwell's screen flashed with victory. The crowd erupted in applause, the sound roaring in Maxwell's ears. He sat there, breathless and stunned, as the realization sank in: he had won. His heart hammered as the announcer called his name, declaring him the champion. He stood up, the weight of the moment making his knees shake. Maxwell glanced around and saw the crowd cheering, some even chanting his gaming name. For the first time in his life, he felt seen. But even more, he felt proud. As he walked to accept his prize, he caught a glimpse of his mother standing by the entrance. Her eyes were wide, and for a moment, he saw the disbelief and pride in them. It was more than just winning a tournament. It was a turning point. "Maxwell," Keona said softly, and this time, her voice carried no anger, only awe. "See, Mummy?" he whispered, as he raised the prize in the air, the golden trophy reflecting the bright lights around him. Gaming wasn't a waste after all. The weeks that followed the tournament were a whirlwind for Maxwell. News of his win spread quickly, reaching local gaming communities and even the attention of online influencers. He started receiving messages from fans, some praising his skills, others asking for tips or for him to play with them. The prize money was a welcome boost, and he used it to buy a new set of equipment, an upgraded laptop, a high-quality mouse, and a gaming chair that felt like a throne. But more than the new gear, it was the shift in his mother's attitude that meant the most to him. Keona started to see Maxwell, not just as a boy wasting time in his room, but as someone who was building a future for himself. It wasn't an overnight change, it took time. She watched him practice and noticed how dedicated he was. She even started to help him set up his streaming sessions, bringing him snacks and checking on him when he was in deep concentration. One evening, after a particularly intense practice session, Keona entered the room and leaned against the doorframe. "Me watch you lately," she said, her eyes softer than they had been in a long time. "You serious about dis, ain't ya?" Maxwell paused, his heart skipping a beat. "Yeah, mummy. Me know it ain't easy to see, but this is what me want. Gaming is what me good at." She nodded, her lips curving into a small, proud smile. "If you really believe in dis, then me why support ya. But you still have to balance your studies, all right?" Relief washed over Maxwell as he leaned back in his chair. For the first time, he felt like he had her blessing, not just as a mother, but as an ally. The next day, he received an email that made his heart race. It was an invitation to join Arcane Warriors, one of the most respected gaming teams in the region. The email promised training opportunities, sponsorships, and a chance to participate in larger tournaments, both local and international. This was it, the big break he'd been waiting for. With the support of his mother and the newfound confidence from his win, Maxwell knew this was only the beginning. He had the spark, now he had to keep it alive. And with each step, he would prove that gaming wasn't just a hobby, it was his path to greatness. Joining Arcane Warriors felt like stepping into a dream. Maxwell's first official practice session with the team was intimidating. He sat in the virtual conference call with the rest of the members, all seasoned players whose usernames carried prestige. Stormblaze, the team captain, was known for his impeccable strategy and calm under pressure. His voice crackled through the speakers. "Welcome, Silent Beast. Show us what you got." Maxwell's hands felt clammy, but the fire in his chest burned brighter than ever. The game started, and it was a full-blown tactical battle. He played with precision and coordination, matching the skill of his teammates. The hours flew by, and before he knew it, the practice session was over. "You've got potential," Stormblaze said. "But it's not just about playing. It's about commitment, teamwork, and constant improvement." As the weeks turned into months, Maxwell's world expanded. He balanced training with school, juggling homework and practice sessions that often ran late into the night. Keona made sure he was eating well and staying healthy, even if it meant reminding him to take breaks. Her support became a lifeline, and Maxwell cherished every moment of it. The team's training camps became his second home. He learned to communicate effectively, to read his teammates' cues, and to adapt in the heat of the moment. He also learned that gaming was more than just quick reflexes. It was about mental resilience and staying calm under pressure. In the middle of one of these sessions, an announcement came through the team's chat. "We've been invited to the Global Arena Championships," the message read. The chat erupted with excitement, and Maxwell felt his heart leap. This was the moment he had been working towards, the opportunity to prove himself on an international stage. When Keona heard the news, she couldn't help but smile, her eyes glistening with tears. "You ready for this, Maxwell?" she asked as she prepared his favorite snack, chocolate chip cookies. "I'm more than ready, Mummy," he said, his voice steady and full of determination. He knew this wasn't just a game anymore. It was the start of his legacy, the chance to show the world, and himself, that he was meant for greatness. The weeks leading up to the Global Arena Championships were a blur of training, preparation, and anticipation. The team gathered daily for extended practice sessions, pushing each other to new limits. The stakes were higher than ever, with sponsorships, media coverage, and a cash prize of $100,000 on the line. The pressure was intense, but Maxwell thrived in it. He knew that this tournament was his chance to cement his name among the best. Each day, he woke up at dawn, the early morning sun casting a warm glow over his room as he prepared for the day. The hours spent in school were spent in a daze, his mind already racing with game strategies and counters. His teachers noted the change in him, the focus that seemed to follow him wherever he went. His friends at school, who had once teased him about playing games all day, were now asking for tips and congratulating him on his success. Keona watched her son with pride as he juggled his responsibilities. "You know me proud of ya," she said one evening as they sat on the porch, the breeze rustling the trees around them. "You really make me see dat dis ain't just a phase. Dis is who you are." "Thanks, Mummy," Maxwell said, his eyes lighting up. It was the first time he felt like she truly understood him. The day before the tournament, Arcane Warriors gathered for one last team meeting. They reviewed strategies, adjusted their game plans, and took a moment to remind each other of their strengths. "We've come a long way," Stormblaze said, his voice full of conviction. "Now it's time to show the world what we're made of." As Maxwell packed his gear that night, his fingers brushed over the lucky bracelet his mother had given him. Simple, handmade, with a small charm of a heart. It was a reminder of home, of everything he was fighting for. The house was quieter than usual. Keona had gone to bed early, telling him to rest. But Maxwell couldn't sleep. The anticipation was buzzing in his veins, a mixture of excitement and nerves. He sat at his desk, staring at the calendar pinned to the wall. The next day would mark the biggest moment of his life. As he gazed at the bold, red X he had marked on the date, a smile crossed his face. This was his time. The morning of the Global Arena Championships arrived, and Maxwell felt a surge of energy as he stepped out of the taxi and into the bustling city. The arena loomed in front of him, an imposing structure adorned with banners, LED lights, and the hum of a crowd that could be heard even from outside. It was bigger than anything he had ever seen, and the realization sent a shiver down his spine. Maxwell and the team made their way through the maze of hallways, passing players from all over the world, each with their own stories and goals. The air was electric with competition, but there was a sense of camaraderie too. Everyone was here to prove something, and Maxwell could feel the weight of that shared ambition. "Remember, it's just like practice," Stormblaze said, noticing Maxwell's nervous glance. "Play your game, don't get caught up in the hype." Maxwell nodded, taking a deep breath as he adjusted his headset and checked his equipment one last time. The arena was divided into sections for different games, and the noise was deafening as crowds cheered for their favorite players. On a massive screen above the main stage, a countdown timer ticked down the minutes until the start of the first round. When the time finally came, the team huddled for a last-minute pep talk. "We're not just playing for the money or the fame," Stormblaze said, his voice low and serious. "We're playing for the people who believed in us. Play hard, play smart." The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Welcome, everyone, to the Global Arena Championships. Today, we witness the clash of the best gamers from around the world. Are you ready?" The crowd erupted, the sound echoing through the arena. Maxwell stepped onto the stage, his heart pounding like a drum. He could see fans waving banners with team logos and chants ringing out from the crowd. A wave of nerves washed over him, but he held steady. This was it, his moment to show the world who he was. The screen in front of him lit up, and the game started. As the first match unfolded, Maxwell fell into the rhythm he had practiced so many times. Each keystroke felt natural, each move intentional. He blocked out the noise, the pressure, and focused solely on the game. The world around him faded as he moved, his instincts taking over. The match was intense, with opponents pushing him to the edge, but Maxwell fought back with everything he had. He was no longer just a boy with a dream, he was a force to be reckoned with. And with every click and every strategy, he knew he was one step closer to making that dream a reality. The first round of the tournament set the stage for what would become an unforgettable series of matches. Maxwell's team, Arcane Warriors, had faced some tough competition, but they had emerged victorious with a confidence that grew as the rounds progressed. Each match seemed tougher than the last, pushing their strategies and reflexes to the limit. Maxwell's heart pounded with every match, but with each win, he felt more invincible. His teammates, seeing his growth, began to rally around him more. Stormblaze would give him subtle nods of approval, and Frostbite whispered words of encouragement whenever they had a moment in between matches. But nothing could have prepared them for their final match in the group stage. They were up against the Black Wolves, the reigning champions known for their aggressive playstyle and flawless coordination. The team was led by Shadowstrike, a player with a reputation for reading the game like no other. The entire arena seemed to hold its breath as the two teams locked eyes across the stage. The game started, and it was as if time sped up. Maxwell was quick to spot the tactics Shadowstrike was employing. Every move was calculated, every counterattack a challenge. The match felt like a chess game, where every player was a piece moving with deadly intent. At one point, Stormblaze signaled to Maxwell to switch strategies. With a flick of his wrist, Maxwell adjusted his game, changing his approach in the blink of an eye. The seconds ticked by, each one like a heartbeat in the chest of the audience. Maxwell's avatar, sleek and agile, dodged and struck with precision. He could almost feel the cheers, the collective energy of the crowd behind him, urging him forward. And then it happened. The Black Wolves made a fatal miscalculation. Maxwell seized the opportunity, executing a combination move that ended the match with only moments left. The arena erupted into a cacophony of noise, the crowd roaring as arcane warriors emerged victorious. Maxwell's hands trembled as he took in the sight of his teammates hugging and high-fiving each other. The stage was theirs for now, but he knew the real challenge was just beginning. As he caught his breath, his eyes found Keona, who had been watching from the stands. She had a proud smile on her face, and for the first time, she looked truly at peace. In that moment, Maxwell knew he had already won. No matter what the final outcome would be, he had already proved to himself, and to her, that he was meant for this. The victory against the Black Wolves sent shockwaves through the tournament. Maxwell's name was suddenly on everyone's lips, his reputation growing as he continued to outperform expectations. The crowd's excitement was palpable, and every step he took felt like a small triumph. With the group stages behind them, Arcane Warriors advanced to the semifinals, a stage that was both thrilling and daunting. The anticipation was thick in the air as teams from around the world vied for a place in the final showdown. Maxwell's focus became even sharper. Late nights spent practicing turned into early mornings, and he pushed his limits, mastering new techniques and perfecting old ones. The pressure was mounting, but he felt the rush of adrenaline every time he sat down to play. His teammates noticed it too. Frostbite, who was always cool and composed, started calling him the Silent Storm for the way he moved through each round, leaving chaos in his wake. Keona noticed the change in him as well. She watched him practice, cheering him on and reminding him to stay grounded. "We know you have dis, Maxwell. Just keep your head clear," she'd tell him whenever he seemed tense. It was her way of reinforcing what had become an unspoken truth, that he was more than just a gamer, he was a force. On the day of the semifinals, Arcane Warriors stood at the edge of their biggest challenge yet. Their opponents were the Crimson Guardians, a team that had been unbeatable for years and had an almost mythical status in the gaming world. Led by the unyielding Viper Fong, a player who had a reputation for dominating matches with strategic brilliance, the team was as formidable as they came. Maxwell felt the weight of the moment, but he remembered the lessons his mother had taught him about resilience. He exchanged a look with Stormblaze, who gave him a quick nod, signaling that they were ready. The arena was a sea of faces, their eyes locked onto the teams as they prepared. The lights dimmed, and the announcer's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the semifinals. Let's get ready to see who will claim their spot in the finals." As the countdown began, Maxwell took a deep breath, his mind clear and focused. The match was set to begin, and he knew that in this game, there could only be one winner. It was time to show the world that Silent Beast was here to stay. The arena erupted as the two teams took their positions. The sheer scale of the competition hit Maxwell once more. The spotlight, the deafening chants of the crowd, the tension that gripped every spectator. This wasn't just another match. This was history in the making. Maxwell glanced at Viper Fong, who sat in the center of the Crimson Guardian's circle, eyes sharp and calculating. The man's reputation as a brilliant strategist was well earned, and the room seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting for the first move. As the match started, it became clear that the Crimson Guardians were playing with an unmatched level of coordination. Every move they made was precise, their communication seamless. Viper Fong led with a relentless offensive, throwing strategies at Arcane Warriors that pushed them to their limits. Maxwell had never faced an opponent like this before. The hours he spent perfecting his moves were now tested in ways he hadn't imagined. But Maxwell was ready. The practice and late-night drills came flooding back to him as he navigated through the challenges, every keystroke and click a part of a greater dance. He could sense when Stormblaze was preparing an ambush and when Frostbite would act as the team's shield. It was a rhythm, a flow that he had learned to embrace. For every challenge the Crimson Guardians threw at them, Arcane Warriors responded with a clever counterattack. The match was fiercely contested, with each team gaining and losing ground in quick succession. The crowd's energy was contagious, with roars and gasps echoing around the arena as the game swung back and forth. Maxwell felt a surge of pride as he saw Stormblaze execute a perfect setup, allowing him to swoop in and secure a crucial win for their team. The score was tied, and the tension was so thick it seemed to suffocate the entire venue. But Viperfong wasn't done yet. With a sudden change in tactics, he launched a surprise move that sent Arcane Warriors into chaos. Maxwell's fingers flew over the keyboard, reacting faster than ever. The seconds dragged into hours as the final moments of the match approached. The team communicated in short, frantic bursts, and Maxwell felt the pressure of being the key to their victory. When the final countdown appeared on the screen, he knew that if they could just hold out for a few more seconds, they would make it to the finals. His heart was pounding, sweat beading at his temples as he watched the last seconds tick away. And then it was done. The screen flashed with the words Arcane Warriors victory, and the arena exploded into a storm of cheers and applause. Maxwell fell back into his chair, a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration washing over him. Stormblaze gave him a slap on the back and a grin. "You did it, Silent Beast. We're in the finals." Maxwell's eyes found his mother in the crowd. She was beaming, tears of joy streaming down her face. In that moment, he knew that all the late nights, all the doubts, and every single second of practice had been worth it. This was more than a win. It was a testament to who he was and the future he was building. The finals were set, and Arcane Warriors had earned their spot against their greatest challenge yet. The Night Stalkers, a team known for their unmatched tactical play and raw, relentless aggression. Led by the enigmatic Dark Phoenix, who had made headlines for his genius mind and icy demeanor, the Night Stalkers were the team everyone feared. No one had defeated them in the last 2 seasons, and their reputation was only matched by their skill. Maxwell's hands trembled as he set up his gaming station, adjusting his headset and taking deep breaths. This was the match that would define him, not just as a gamer, but as a person who dared to chase his dreams despite the odds. Keona sat in the front row of the arena, surrounded by a crowd that seemed to share the same collective heartbeat as her own. This was the moment she had envisioned for Maxwell. The moment he stood on the precipice of something extraordinary. She clenched her fists, willing all her hopes and love to reach him, hoping he could feel her unwavering belief in him even from afar. As the teams prepared, the arena's lights dimmed and a spotlight illuminated the main stage. The announcer's voice thundered through the speakers. "Welcome to the finals of the Global Arena Championships. In one corner, we have the undefeated, the kings of strategy, the Night Stalkers. And in the other, making their debut in this arena, the underdogs who dared to challenge the status quo, Arcane Warriors. Let the battle begin." The match started with a bang. The Night Stalkers immediately launched a calculated, aggressive offensive, pushing Arcane Warriors into a defensive position. Maxwell could feel his heart pounding in his chest, but he pushed it aside, focusing only on the game. Every decision had to be precise. He could feel Dark Phoenix's presence, a constant, looming threat that kept him alert. "Move left now," Stormblaze ordered, and Maxwell darted his character to safety, avoiding a devastating attack from Night Shadow, one of the fastest players on the opposing team. The game played out like an epic war, with strategies colliding in an intricate dance of moves and countermoves. The arena roared with excitement, but Maxwell's mind was in a bubble, focused solely on the screen in front of him. His fingers moved with mechanical precision, anticipating the enemy's next move before they made it. Minutes turned into hours as the match reached its final moments. The score was neck and neck, with each team struggling to claim the upper hand. Dark Phoenix made his move, launching a sequence of attacks that nearly caught Maxwell off guard. He felt a surge of adrenaline as he calculated his response, choosing between offense and defense. At the last second, he switched tactics and executed a risky maneuver that secured a critical point. The screen flashed with a countdown, 3, 2, 1. The final seconds of the match felt like an eternity. When the timer hit 0, the words Arcane Warriors appeared, and the entire arena exploded into a cacophony of cheers and screams. Maxwell's hands fell away from the keyboard as he looked around, disbelief washing over him. They had done it. They had beaten the Night Stalkers and claimed victory in the championship. Tears welled up in his eyes as he scanned the crowd, searching for his mother. Keona stood, tears streaming down her face, clapping and shouting with joy. The bond they shared, forged through hard work, sacrifice, and belief, had brought him here. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would forever change their lives. The arena was a blur of lights, cheers, and flashing cameras as Arcane warriors stood on the stage, their victory sinking in. The roar of the crowd was deafening, but it was drowned out by the pounding of Maxwell's heart. His teammates were hugging each other, faces lit with disbelief and joy. Stormblaze pulled him into a bear hug, shouting, "We did it, Silent Beast. We really did it." But amidst the celebration, Maxwell felt a wave of emotion wash over him. The pressure that had built up for so long was finally released, and he was overwhelmed with gratitude. He turned to see Keona weaving through the crowd, her eyes locked on him, her smile wide and proud. The moment their eyes met, she mouthed, "I'm so proud of you, Maxwell." The next few days were a whirlwind. Interviews, sponsorship meetings, and media appearances filled Maxwell's schedule as he began to understand the magnitude of their win. The gaming world was abuzz, and Arcane warriors were no longer just a team. They were legends. Reports began to flood in, showcasing their dramatic victory and Maxwell's key role in the match. It was surreal. The boy who had once been scolded for wasting his time playing video games was now a household name, a beacon of possibility for every gamer with dreams. Keona's life changed as well. With their newfound fame came opportunities she had never imagined. She was approached by local and international media outlets wanting to tell her story, to share how she had supported her son through every challenge. The world's perception of Maxwell and his journey inspired many, including those who once doubted him. He became a symbol not just of talent, but of perseverance. But it wasn't just the fame and accolades that mattered to Maxwell. It was the way his mother's eyes lit up when she talked about him. "This is just the start," she would tell him, her voice full of hope. "You always knew you had it in you, and now the world knows it too." Maxwell knew his life had changed forever, but he felt that this was just the beginning. He and his team were preparing for international tournaments, partnerships with brands, and even creating a series of tutorials and motivational content for aspiring gamers. The journey ahead was daunting, but Maxwell embraced it, knowing that the boy who once played for fun had become a man with a purpose, proof that dreams, no matter how improbable, could come true. The phone in his pocket buzzed, and he glanced at it. A message from his mother appeared. "Come home, Maxwell. Dinner's on me tonight. We have a lot to celebrate." With a grin, he typed back, "I'm on my way, Mum." As he left the stadium, the future ahead felt wide open, and he was ready to take it on. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm, golden hues across the sky as Maxwell walked down the quiet street toward his home. It was late, but the excitement still buzzed in his veins. His victory felt surreal, almost like a dream he would wake from any moment. But the laughter of his teammates echoing in his mind, the sound of cheers, and the sight of Keona's proud smile were as real as the cool evening breeze brushing against his skin. As he entered the house, the aroma of his favorite dish, jerk chicken with rice and peas, welcomed him. The kitchen light was on, and he found his mother at the stove, stirring the pot with a smile that radiated pure joy. The kitchen was warm, filled with the comforting scent of home and the quiet hum of the radio playing an old reggae song. "Come eat, Maxwell," Keona said, turning to face him. Her eyes, though tired, were full of life. "You done good tonight, me boy." Maxwell sat down at the table, a wave of emotion washing over him as he glanced at the meal. This was more than just food. It was a symbol of all the moments they'd shared. Long nights filled with doubts, days where his dreams seemed impossible, and times when Keona had reminded him of his worth. He reached for her hand across the table and squeezed it. "Thanks for never giving up on me, Mum," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. Keona's smile softened as she met his eyes. "Never, me son. From the moment you pick up dat controller, me knew you would make it. You always had de fire." They ate together, the world outside feeling far away and insignificant. Maxwell thought about the future, about traveling the world, meeting fans, and building a legacy that could inspire others. But it wasn't just about the fame and success. It was about the journey, the sacrifices, and the love that brought him here. As the evening went on, Keona pulled out her phone, showing Maxwell a message she had received from an old friend, a prominent gaming sponsor interested in signing him to a long-term deal. The realization that the world was opening up to him in ways he never imagined made him pause. It wasn't just his talent or his team that had brought him here. It was the support and love of the person sitting across from him. "Looks like it's just the beginning, Mum," Maxwell said with a grin. Keona laughed, a sound that filled the room with warmth. "Trust me, Maxwell, the best is yet to come." As the night stretched on, they talked about plans and dreams and the future they would build together. Maxwell knew that no matter what came next, whether it was the whirlwind of sponsorships, the challenges of staying at the top, or new opportunities beyond gaming, his mother would be there, cheering him on, just as she always had. The weeks following the championship were a blur of interviews, sponsorships, and appearances. Maxwell's name became synonymous with gaming excellence, and he was recognized everywhere, from the streets of Kingston to the bustling airports where he traveled. But amid the fame and excitement, he never forgot the lessons his mother had taught him. Keona's words, "Never forget where you come from," echoed in his mind, reminding him to stay grounded and keep his heart true. But Maxwell wanted to do more than just enjoy his success. He wanted to share the opportunities that had come his way with others who dreamed of following in his footsteps. He began hosting weekly gaming workshops in local community centers, teaching young gamers the basics and sharing stories of how he had turned his passion into a career. He used his platform not just to promote himself, but to uplift others, especially those who needed a mentor like he once did. His workshops became the talk of the town. Kids would come from all over Jamaica, excited to learn from the boy who had become a gaming icon. They brought their old controllers, questions ready, and bright eyes full of curiosity. Maxwell welcomed them with the same enthusiasm he'd felt when he was starting out. He showed them how to build strategies, manage stress, and learn from every game they played. The sessions turned into more than just lessons. They became a place for them to find confidence, friendship, and hope. Keona watched this side of her son with immense pride. Seeing him give back, she realized that his success wasn't just about winning championships. It was about shaping a future where others could dream bigger. One evening, after a particularly successful workshop, Maxwell came home to find Keona in the living room, holding an old photograph of the two of them from when he was little. She looked up, eyes glistening. "You know, Maxwell, when me used to tell you to stop playing D-game and focus on something real, me never imagined this," she said, her voice soft. Maxwell chuckled, sitting down beside her. "Me know, Mum. But look at we now. We're creating something real dreams, real change." That night, as he drifted off to sleep, Maxwell knew that while his life had changed in ways he never thought possible, he was doing what mattered most: inspiring others and building a community where they too could believe in the impossible. It was a new chapter, one where he wasn't just the gamer who made it big, but the mentor who helped others find their way. Maxwell woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing on the nightstand, a notification lighting up the screen. He reached over, bleary-eyed, and squinted at the message. It was from Stormblaze, a teammate and close friend. The text read, "We just got invited to the World Gamers Summit in Tokyo. This is huge, bro, reply ASAP." Maxwell's heart skipped a beat. The World Gamers Summit was a prestigious event, bringing together the best players, developers, and innovators from around the world. It wasn't just a competition. It was a place where minds came together to shape the future of gaming. Being invited was a sign of recognition, an acknowledgement that arcane warriors were now considered among the best in the global gaming community. With a smile spreading across his face, he quickly texted back, "Count me in. Let's make this happen." As he lay back in bed, the realization of what this invitation meant hit him. The world was watching, and the stakes were higher than ever. The summit wasn't just an opportunity to compete. It was a chance to prove that his success wasn't a fluke, that he could go even further. Keona was in the kitchen when Maxwell entered, his eyes still shining with excitement. "Mum, we just got invited to the World Gamers Summit in Tokyo," he said, unable to contain his enthusiasm. Keona's eyes widened with disbelief before a proud smile broke across her face. "You serious? This is it, Maxwell. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for. We know you can handle it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Arcane warriors practiced day and night, working tirelessly on new strategies and refining their gameplay. They knew they'd be facing the best of the best. Teams from countries known for their top-tier players, each bringing their unique approach and skill. The pressure was mounting, but so was their determination. Meanwhile, Maxwell continued his mentorship programs, encouraging the young gamers who attended his workshops to dream big and stay dedicated. "If you put work in, you can reach anywhere," he told them during one session, his eyes glinting with conviction. It was a message that resonated deeply with the kids and served as a reminder to Maxwell of why he started this journey in the first place. As the day of departure came, Maxwell stood in the airport with Keona by his side. She hugged him tightly, her voice choked with emotion. "Go show D-World what you made of, Maxwell." "I will, Mum," he said, holding her close. "And when we come back, we're not just going to be winners, we're going to be game changers." With that, he boarded the plane, feeling the weight of what was to come. The next chapter would test everything he had worked for, but Maxwell was ready. The world had only just begun to see what he could do, and he was determined to show them that his journey was only beginning. The flight to Tokyo was long, but Maxwell barely felt the hours pass. His mind was alive with excitement and anticipation, racing through strategies, game scenarios, and the enormity of what was ahead. As the plane descended into Tokyo, the sight of the sprawling city below, glittering with lights, filled him with awe. This was a place of dreams, a place where innovation thrived and the best of the best came to prove themselves. It was where he would face not only skilled competitors, but also test the limits of his own abilities. When he arrived at the gaming arena, the atmosphere was electric. The space was filled with an almost tangible energy as teams from all corners of the globe gathered. The walls were adorned with neon lights, massive screens, and banners showing logos of gaming brands and sponsors. Fans from all over the world were in attendance, cheering, taking photos, and waving flags emblazoned with team logos. It was a sight Maxwell had only seen in documentaries and on social media, but now he was here, standing at the heart of it all. "Maxwell!" Stormblaze called out, waving him over. He was with the rest of Arcane Warriors, each of them adjusting their gear and discussing their strategy. The team exchanged excited nods and high fives, their nerves mingling with excitement. The team's first match was against a group called the Iron Wolves, a team known for their impeccable defense and patient gameplay. Maxwell felt the adrenaline pumping as the countdown began. The arena lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd, punctuated by the crackling of anticipation. "Remember what we practiced," Stormblaze said, eyes locked with Maxwell's. "We play together, we stay strong." Maxwell nodded, adjusting his headset as the game loaded. The moment the match started, it was clear the Iron Wolves had come prepared. Their strategy was methodical, forcing Arcane Warriors to stay on their toes and adapt. Every move was crucial, every second mattered. Maxwell's hands moved quickly, his mind processing the game's data at lightning speed. The crowd's roars seemed distant, muffled by the focus consuming him. As the match progressed, Arcane Warriors began to find their rhythm, countering the Iron Wolves' plays with precision and speed. It was a battle of wits, patience, and skill, and for every attack Maxwell launched, there was a cheer that surged through the audience. The match ended in a hard-fought victory for Arcane Warriors, and as the game's final score appeared on the screen, the crowd erupted in applause. "We did it!" Stormblaze shouted, throwing his arms up in victory. The team huddled, faces bright with smiles and relief. Maxwell let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding, the weight of the moment settling in. This was only the beginning, but they had proven themselves, taking the first step towards their goal. But as the team celebrated, Maxwell caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. A young gamer he recognized from one of his workshops. The kid's eyes were wide with awe, and he mouthed a silent cheer. Maxwell's heart swelled with emotion. This was more than a competition. It was the realization of everything he stood for. He raised his hand in a wave, the kid responding with a smile and an excited fist pump. The arena was buzzing with excitement for the next round, but Maxwell knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready. The game had changed, and so had he. The next day, Arcane Warriors found themselves facing a team they had only heard about in whispers, the Shadow Reapers. Known for their unmatched speed and ruthless gameplay, they were the reigning champions, and beating them was considered nearly impossible. Maxwell knew this match would be the ultimate test, not just for his skills but for the unity and trust of his team. They had come this far, but now they were standing at the edge of greatness, looking out at the abyss of their greatest challenge yet. As they prepared backstage, Maxwell caught his reflection in a polished glass window. The confident young man staring back at him was a far cry from the boy who once sat in his room, controller in hand, dreaming of a day when he could make a difference. The sound of his teammates strategizing snapped him out of his thoughts. He joined them, eyes meeting theirs, understanding that their success depended on more than just technical skill. It depended on belief, teamwork, and courage. "All right, team," Stormblaze said, rallying everyone. "We've trained for this. We know their moves, we know how they think. If we play like we know how, we can beat them." The match began, and the first few moments were a test of nerves. The Shadow Reapers attacked with a relentless ferocity, pushing arcane warriors to their limits. Maxwell's heart raced as he watched his team scramble to counter each surprise attack. His fingers flew across the controller, every muscle in his body tense with anticipation. The audience's cheers were deafening, but it was the calm voice of his mother in his mind that kept him centered. You always had fire, Maxwell. Let it shine. With each passing minute, arcane warriors started to adapt, moving in sync, communicating with quick gestures and code words that only they understood. They shifted strategies, countered, and retaliated with precision. The match was a back and forth, each team taking the lead for short bursts before the other fought back. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, breaths held, eyes wide as the game reached its final moments. It came down to a last push. Maxwell, with his heart pounding, took control and led a coordinated attack that broke through the Shadow Reaper's defenses. His teammates supported him, a well-oiled machine of strategy and skill. With one final move, the game ended, and arcane warriors emerged victorious. The arena erupted in cheers, and the roar was so powerful it sent shivers down Maxwell's spine. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Maxwell looked at his teammates, their faces a mix of disbelief and joy. Stormblaze jumped up and down, fists pumping in the air, while the rest of the team hugged and laughed in sheer exhilaration. The crowd's energy was electric, but Maxwell's eyes found the young boy in the crowd, who had watched him the day before. The kid's expression was a mix of awe and inspiration, a silent reminder of why this journey mattered. Maxwell took a deep breath and raised his hand to the crowd, signaling their victory. This wasn't just about the championship. It was about showing the world that dreams could come true, even in places where people might not believe. The journey wasn't over, but for now, arcane warriors stood at the peak of their success, proof that hard work, passion, and unwavering belief could turn the impossible into reality. Months passed, and Maxwell's influence continued to grow. His mentorship programs expanded, now featuring collaborative projects where young gamers could work together to create their own games. The arcane warriors became household names, not just for their victories but for their dedication to building a better future. But as the pressure of his newfound responsibilities weighed on him, Maxwell knew he needed to do more to solidify his legacy. One afternoon, Maxwell sat down with Stormblaze and the rest of his team to discuss an idea he had been mulling over for weeks. "We want to start a project that lasts even after we're done gaming," he said, eyes bright with determination. The team listened intently, sensing that this was a pivotal moment. "I'm calling it the Legacy Project," Maxwell continued. "It's a scholarship fund for young, talented gamers and tech enthusiasts who don't have the means to pursue their passions. It'll cover everything from education and equipment to workshops and mentorship." The room fell silent as his teammates took in the proposal. A few moments later, Stormblaze grinned and clapped him on the back. "That's the move, Maxwell. Let's make it happen." Maxwell's idea quickly gained traction. With the help of his sponsors and partnerships with tech companies, they launched the project in record time. The first round of scholarships was announced at a major gaming event in Kingston, with kids and parents filling the venue, eyes wide with hope and excitement. When the first recipients were announced, Maxwell felt an emotion he couldn't quite describe: pride, but mixed with a profound sense of responsibility. These were the faces of future game developers, future champions, and future leaders. One of the scholarship winners was a young girl named Zuri, whose parents couldn't afford the technology she needed for her passion. She stood on stage, nervous but beaming as she held the scholarship certificate. When Maxwell called her name, she ran to him, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Maxwell smiled, remembering his own struggles, his mother's voice, and the sacrifices that had brought him here. "You're going to do amazing things, Zuri," he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Over the following months, the Legacy Project began to make waves. Stories of young talents being nurtured and encouraged filled the airwaves, and Maxwell's name became synonymous with change and innovation. It was a reminder to the world that true success wasn't just about personal achievements, but about leaving behind something meaningful. As he watched Zuri and other scholarship recipients thrive, Maxwell knew he had found his true calling. Not just to play, but to inspire, create opportunities, and foster a community that believed in a better future. This was more than gaming. It was a revolution, one that began with a boy who dared to dream and grew into a legacy that would outlast him. It was a crisp morning in Kingston when Maxwell received an unexpected call that would set the course for the next phase of his journey. The voice on the other end was deep and confident. "Mr. Maxwell, this is Dr. Kenji Nakamura from Innovate Tech Global. We've been following your work, and we believe it's time we took it to the next level." Maxwell's heart quickened at the mention of Innovate Tech Global. The company was renowned for pioneering cutting-edge technology, merging gaming with augmented reality, AR, and virtual reality, VR. To think that they were reaching out to him was surreal. Dr. Nakamura's words continued. "We'd like to partner with you on a project that combines gaming with real-world impact. We're calling it Next Gen Gamers, Reality Unlocked." The concept was revolutionary. Next Gen Gamers would be an AR platform that would immerse players in a hybrid world where gaming met real-life challenges. Players could complete tasks that helped local communities, such as building tech hubs, coding workshops, and creating digital art for public displays. The platform would not only entertain but educate and inspire, bridging the gap between digital and physical worlds. Maxwell listened intently, a smile forming as the gears in his mind turned. "Dr. Nakamura, this is exactly what I've been dreaming of," he said, the excitement clear in his voice. "This project could change the way we think about gaming and community involvement." Over the next few months, Maxwell and Arcane Warriors worked alongside the Innovate Tech team to develop the platform. They experimented with AR simulations, designing challenges that taught valuable skills while allowing players to contribute to real-world solutions. The project began to take shape, and with it, Maxwell's vision grew clearer. A future where gaming could be a force for good. When Next Gen Gamers, Reality Unlocked finally launched, it was met with overwhelming enthusiasm. Gamers from all backgrounds were eager to join, not just for the thrill of competition, but for the chance to make a tangible difference. Players could build virtual schools that were later funded and built in real life, develop coding tutorials that were shared globally, and take part in challenges that promoted environmental sustainability. Maxwell watched the first live event, where thousands of players worked together to design a virtual eco-park that was funded and constructed in a nearby community. The park became a sanctuary for children, a place where they could learn, play, and find inspiration. Maxwell couldn't help but tear up at the sight of it. This was the future he had envisioned, where gaming wasn't just about winning, it was about creating, contributing, and connecting. The success of Next Gen Gamers cemented Maxwell's place not just as a gamer, but as a global innovator and leader. It proved that with passion, the right partnerships, and an unwavering belief in possibility, anything was achievable. As he stood on stage during the official launch event, looking out at the crowd of gamers, developers, and community leaders, Maxwell spoke with a voice that rang out with conviction. "We've only just begun. This is the start of something bigger. The power of gaming is in our hands, and together, we're going to shape the future." The crowd erupted in cheers, their faces bright with hope and excitement. Maxwell knew the world was changing, and he was leading the way, proving that even a boy who loved gaming could change the world. The success of Next Gen Gamers, Reality Unlocked, had spread like wildfire, earning Maxwell international recognition and praise. But while accolades and sponsorships flooded in, there was a longing deep inside him that only home could satisfy. The relentless pace of his newfound fame had made him forget the simple joys that had once filled his days: sunset strolls on the beach, late-night talks with his mother, and the quiet moments when he would sit by the window, controller in hand, dreaming big. One evening, after a particularly intense series of meetings with partners from around the world, Maxwell decided it was time for a break. He made arrangements to fly back to Jamaica, where it all began. The plane touched down at Norman Manley International Airport, and a rush of nostalgia swept over him. The warm, salty air, the chatter of street vendors, and the vibrant colors of the market stalls felt like a welcome embrace. As he drove through the streets of Kingston, he was struck by how little had changed, and yet how much he had grown. His mother's house stood the same, a cozy home with a front porch that overlooked a narrow road. Maxwell stepped out of the car, inhaling the scent of fresh rain and flowering hibiscus. He knocked on the door, and when it opened, there she was, Keona, her eyes lighting up with recognition and love. "Look at ya, me boy. Come home at last," she said, pulling him into a hug that spoke of relief and pride. Maxwell felt the weight of the world melt away in that moment. They spent the evening sharing stories, laughter, and memories. Keona listened intently as Maxwell recounted his travels and the incredible journey that had brought him back home. "Me always know you had it in ya," she said, beaming. "But you never forget where you come from." The next morning, Maxwell took a walk through the neighborhoods he had once known so well. He passed by his old school and noticed the children playing on the playground. The sound of their laughter brought back memories of simpler times, and he realized that those moments had helped shape him just as much as the victories and challenges that came later. As he strolled along the beach that afternoon, watching the waves crash against the shore, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. His mission wasn't just about gaming. It was about community, change, and reminding others that greatness could start from anywhere. He knew that the next chapter of his journey would be one that focused on deepening these connections, strengthening the legacy project, and expanding his work to more communities across the Caribbean and beyond. Maxwell looked out at the horizon, the sun dipping below the waves, casting a golden glow across the water. The future was still unwritten, but he was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that no matter where life took him, home would always be a part of him. And in that moment, he knew that the greatest legacy he could leave wasn't just in the games he played or the awards he earned, but in the people he inspired, the lives he changed, and the hope he brought to those who dared to dream. The days that followed Maxwell's return to Jamaica were filled with a newfound energy. His time at home had reignited the spark that had fueled his journey from the very start. With Keona's unwavering support, he began planning his next big endeavor, an initiative called Tech Roots, designed to introduce underprivileged communities to the world of technology and gaming. This project was a continuation of the Legacy Project, but had a special focus on empowering young minds to think creatively and develop their skills in a way that could change their futures. Maxwell knew that to truly make an impact, he needed to collaborate with local leaders and organizations that shared his vision. He reached out to community centers, schools, and tech hubs, organizing meetings with their directors. The goal was to create tech hubs where young people could gather, learn, and work on projects that harnessed the power of both digital and physical spaces. These hubs would become safe havens for learning, where curiosity was encouraged and the potential for greatness was recognized. One afternoon, Maxwell met with Dr. Simone Clark, a renowned tech educator and advocate for digital literacy. She had spent years teaching coding and digital skills in the most remote areas of Jamaica. When Maxwell shared his vision, her eyes lit up with excitement. "This is exactly what we need," she said, clasping her hands together. "The youth have so much potential, but they just need the tools and opportunities to unlock it." Together, Maxwell and Dr. Clark began designing the Tech Roots curriculum, which included coding workshops, gaming tournaments with educational objectives, and mentoring sessions led by some of the best minds in the field. The initiative aimed to blend fun with education, showing young people that tech was not just a career, but a means to express themselves, solve problems, and create new opportunities for their communities. Meanwhile, Arcane Warriors took part in promotional events, speaking at schools and demonstrating the potential of gaming and technology. The team's presence inspired students and parents alike. One day, during a visit to a school in rural St. Elizabeth, Maxwell met a young boy named Jamar who shared his passion for gaming, but had never considered it a viable career path. Jamar's wide-eyed enthusiasm and questions about how he could start his own journey reminded Maxwell of his younger self. "We never thought you would end up here," Jamar said, eyes shining. Maxwell grinned, feeling a deep connection. "You never know where dreams will take you. Just believe, work hard, and never give up." As the weeks turned into months, Tech Roots gained momentum. Sponsorships and partnerships poured in, and soon, the first tech hubs were set up. The workshops began to fill with children eager to learn, their laughter mingling with the hum of computers and the crackle of excitement as they created their first digital projects. Maxwell watched with pride as the initiative took shape, knowing that with each new mind sparked, the future grew brighter. But even amidst this success, Maxwell knew that the true challenge lay ahead, keeping the momentum going and ensuring that the work he started would continue to grow and evolve. It was no longer just about being a gamer. It was about becoming a catalyst for change, proving that a young boy from Kingston could inspire the world and leave behind a legacy that would last long after the games were over. With Tech Roots flourishing, Maxwell knew that he was at the beginning of something bigger than he had ever anticipated. The buzz surrounding the initiative reached far beyond the shores of Jamaica, drawing attention from other Caribbean nations and even international organizations. He began receiving invitations to speak at tech conferences, participate in global panels, and collaborate with other innovators who shared his vision for using gaming and technology for social good. One such invitation came from the Global Digital Empowerment Summit, an annual event that brought together thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and changemakers from around the world. Maxwell was honored to be a keynote speaker, his story being shared as an example of how technology could transcend barriers and ignite transformation. The night before his speech, he sat in his hotel room, a notebook in hand, jotting down thoughts and ideas. He wanted to convey not just his journey, but the hope that Tech Roots and other initiatives could inspire. The day of the summit was filled with anticipation. The conference hall was buzzing with people eager to hear from the young visionary who had revolutionized the concept of gaming for change. Maxwell took the stage, looking out at the sea of faces before him. The lights dimmed, and he began to speak, weaving his story with the larger mission of the Tech Roots initiative. His words resonated, drawing nods of agreement and waves of applause. He spoke of the power of community, the importance of investing in future generations, and how the barriers between gaming and real-world impact were not as vast as they seemed. Technology should not be a privilege. It should be a right, he said, the room silent as his words sank in. Our goal with Tech Roots is to make it accessible, to show young minds that their creativity, passion, and drive can lead them to greatness. But it doesn't stop there. We need to continue to build, to innovate, and to bring more people into this conversation. After the speech, as people approached him to shake his hand and share their own ideas, Maxwell realized that he was part of a movement larger than himself. He was no longer just Maxwell, the boy who loved gaming. He was Maxwell, the advocate, the mentor, the leader who inspired change. Back in Jamaica, Arcane Warriors continued their work, hosting tournaments that doubled as fundraisers for scholarships and educational programs. The team's efforts reached schools in remote villages, where children who had never touched a computer before now sat with beaming faces, learning to code and create. Maxwell spent more time visiting these sites, seeing firsthand how his work was transforming lives. One day, he received a message from Dr. Simone Clark with a link to an article. It was titled, "The Rise of Tech Roots: Changing the Narrative of Caribbean Youth." As he read it, he felt a swell of pride and determination. The impact of Tech Roots was clear, but the work was far from over. There were still countless communities that needed support, countless young dreamers who needed to see that their future was limitless. Maxwell looked out at the Caribbean Sea, its waters stretching out as far as the eye could see. It was a symbol of boundless possibilities. He knew he would never stop striving to expand horizons, not just for himself, but for the entire world. As Tech Roots continued to expand its reach, Maxwell began to realize that he needed more than just his team to carry the vision forward. He needed strategic alliances with organizations and influential figures who could amplify the impact of the initiative. It was during a trip to a regional tech fair in Trinidad and Tobago that Maxwell met Amara Cruz, a dynamic entrepreneur who had launched a successful startup that connected local artisans with digital marketplaces. Her work had transformed the way small businesses operated, and she was known for her innovative ideas and keen business sense. Maxwell found himself drawn to Amara's energy as they discussed their shared vision for technological empowerment. "We're both trying to do something similar," she said, eyes sparkling as she leaned forward. "Your Tech Roots idea is groundbreaking. But what if we took it further, turned it into a network that ties together tech education with sustainable economic growth?" The idea resonated with Maxwell. They brainstormed late into the night, crafting a vision that combined tech literacy, environmental awareness, and economic development. The result was a new branch of Tech Roots called Green Bites, an initiative aimed at teaching tech skills that supported eco-friendly projects. For example, coding lessons could be tied to projects that taught how to build solar-powered water purifiers or set up community gardens with automated irrigation systems controlled by simple programs. Back in Kingston, Maxwell called a meeting with Arcane Warriors and Dr. Simone Clark to present the new initiative. Their excitement was palpable, and they began making plans for the first Green Bites pilot program, set to launch in a coastal community known for its struggles with both pollution and limited access to tech. The first Green Bites workshop was held in a community center overlooking the sea. Maxwell, standing beside Amara, looked out at the eager faces of the young participants. They were given tasks like designing programs for automated compost bins and coding simple apps that monitored air quality. It was a blend of learning, creativity, and environmental consciousness that left everyone buzzing with excitement. Maxwell found himself thinking of his mother, her voice echoing in his mind. She had always pushed him to work hard, believing in him even when it seemed like no one else did. Now he could see how those words had taken root, growing into a mission that was bigger than just himself. His heart swelled as he watched the children's faces light up with newfound purpose. Amara turned to him, a proud smile on her face. "This is only the beginning, Maxwell. We're building a foundation that will last generations." Maxwell nodded, determination setting in his features. He knew that with each new initiative, each young mind sparked by knowledge, Tech Roots would reach new heights. But this was more than just a mission, it was a movement. And now it had allies, new dreams, new leaders, and a future waiting to be written. It was early morning when Maxwell received a message that would stir memories he hadn't thought of in years. The sender's name was Mr. Howard, the former principal of his old school, who had once been more of an authoritarian figure than a mentor. The message was simple but striking. "Maxwell, we'd like to invite you to speak at the annual School Awards Day. Your story has inspired generations, and it's time they hear it from you." The invitation took Maxwell back to the days when he was just a boy with dreams too big for the small classroom he sat in. He remembered Mr. Howard's deep voice booming as he lectured on discipline, focus, and striving for more. At the time, Maxwell had viewed the man as rigid and unyielding. But now, he realized that Mr. Howard had instilled in him a sense of ambition and the will to push forward when times were tough. When Maxwell arrived at the school, he was greeted with a warm welcome. The familiar schoolyard was alive with students and teachers, the chatter a mix of excitement and nervous energy. Mr. Howard stood by the entrance, a smile breaking across his usually stern face. "Maxwell, welcome back. It's been too long," he said, extending a hand that now seemed a little softer. The auditorium was filled with parents, teachers, and students when Maxwell took the stage. He looked out at the sea of faces and felt a blend of nostalgia and gratitude. This was the place where he first learned to dream, where he learned that obstacles were only temporary and not the end of the road. Standing before the audience, he began his speech, not as a successful billionaire gamer, but as Maxwell, the boy who had once believed he was just another kid with too many ideas and too little opportunity. "Every journey has its beginning, and for me, it started right here," he said, his voice steady as he scanned the room. "You may not see it now, but the small steps you take today will lead to the biggest milestones of your life." He shared stories of late nights playing games, the doubts cast by his mother, and the moment he decided to turn those doubts into fuel. He spoke of Tech Roots and the recent launch of Green Bites, urging the students to see beyond the screen and find ways to use their passions to create change. The auditorium was silent, rapt with attention as Maxwell recounted his journey. When he finished, there was a moment of stillness, followed by a slow, thundering applause that left him humbled and inspired. Afterwards, as students approached him, eager to ask questions and share their own dreams, Mr. Howard pulled him aside. "I never thought I'd see the day when one of my students would come back to inspire a new generation," he said, his voice tinged with pride. "You've done more than make a name for yourself, Maxwell. You've made a difference." Maxwell smiled, the weight of his achievements finally settling into a comforting embrace. "It's only the beginning, Mr. Howard. And it's all because of the lessons I learned here." That evening, as Maxwell walked through the school grounds, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He was no longer just a boy who loved gaming. He was proof that dreams could take root and grow into something bigger than anyone imagined. And as long as there were new dreams to nurture, there would always be a reason to keep going. As Maxwell continued to strengthen Tech Roots and build momentum for Green Bites, he felt the time had come to establish an enduring vision that could reach beyond the Caribbean. One afternoon, while sitting with his team at Arcane Warriors headquarters, Maxwell laid out his thoughts. "We've already created something that's changing lives, but it's time to take it global," he said, tapping his pen on the table as everyone turned their attention to him. "I want to create an international network that connects young innovators from all corners of the world." The room fell silent, the weight of his ambition settling in. Dr. Simone Clark, who had become one of his closest allies, spoke first. "Maxwell, we've made such an impact locally, but taking this global is a huge step. Do we have the resources for it?" Maxwell nodded. "Not yet, but we will. We're already getting attention from global organizations. If we play our cards right, this could become a movement with partnerships that span the globe." He laid out a plan for an event called the Global Innovators Challenge, a competition where youth could submit projects that combine technology, sustainability, and social impact. The challenge would be hosted simultaneously in multiple countries and offer scholarships, mentorship, and seed funding for the most promising ideas. The response from his team was electric. They spent the next few weeks working on the logistics, reaching out to potential partners, and setting up the framework for the competition. Maxwell's mind buzzed with ideas as he envisioned the day when a young coder from a village in Ghana would present a renewable energy app, or a young artist from Puerto Rico would showcase an interactive game designed to teach environmental science. As the event date approached, Maxwell received news that the first Global Innovators Challenge would be hosted in partnership with the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. The announcement sent waves of excitement through his team. This was no longer just a local initiative. It was a global movement that had the potential to create real, tangible change. The night before the challenge launch, Maxwell sat at his desk, staring at a photo on the wall. A picture of him and his mother, taken during the early days when they would sit in their modest living room, surrounded by gaming magazines and dreams of a brighter future. He traced the outline of her face with his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Mama." The day of the Global Innovators Challenge arrived with all the pomp and anticipation befitting such an event. The opening speech was delivered by Maxwell himself, who spoke passionately about how innovation was not just about creating something new, but about connecting people, building communities, and empowering the next generation. He shared stories of young changemakers who had inspired him, emphasizing that the world needed bold thinkers, no matter their background or where they came from. Over the next few weeks, the competition blossomed. Young innovators submitted their projects, from simple coding challenges that provided clean water solutions to games that educated users on recycling practices. The submissions were a testament to the boundless potential of young minds when given the tools and opportunity to dream big. Maxwell's heart swelled with pride as he watched the winners receive their awards, surrounded by a diverse group of supporters, mentors, and leaders. He knew that this was just the beginning. With each new project, each new idea, the future looked brighter, not just for the participants, but for the entire world. As the event concluded, Maxwell returned to his office, looking out at the city below. The world was changing, and he knew that he had played a part in that change. It wasn't just about gaming anymore. It was about using that power to shape a world where every dreamer, from any corner of the earth, had the chance to make their mark. The success of the Global Innovators Challenge had sent shockwaves across the world. News outlets were abuzz with stories about Maxwell and his initiatives, showcasing how a young boy from Kingston had transformed the gaming world into a platform for social good. His journey inspired millions, and the positive feedback began to pour in from all corners of the globe. Messages of gratitude and admiration flooded his inbox, and invitations to speak at conferences and universities became routine. One evening, as Maxwell sat in his office working on new ideas, he received a video call from Asha Patel, a tech leader from India whose work in educational technology had been highly regarded. She was calling to congratulate him on the success of the challenge. "Maxwell, I've been following your work for months now, and I must say your Tech Roots initiative is revolutionary. I'd like to propose a partnership between Tech Roots and Innovate India, an organization focused on bridging the digital divide in rural communities. Together, we could develop joint programs that inspire and teach even more young minds." The prospect of expanding Tech Roots even further excited Maxwell. He realized that his dream of a global network was becoming a reality, and this partnership was just the beginning. He immediately said yes, envisioning the day when young innovators in India could share ideas with their peers in the Caribbean, building networks and friendships that transcended borders. While Maxwell's professional life was thriving, his personal life was not left untouched. His mother, who had once doubted his love for gaming, was now proud of the man her son had become. One Sunday, as they sat on their porch watching Maxwell's young cousins play in the yard, she turned to him with tears in her eyes. "I always knew you had something special, she said softly. "But I never could have imagined it would turn out like this." "Thanks for believing in me, Mama," Maxwell replied, giving her a warm smile. "You taught me that anything is possible if you don't give up." With the growing network of tech hubs and the expansion of Tech Roots, Maxwell's schedule became more demanding. He spent hours reviewing new curriculum ideas, partnering with global tech companies for funding and planning outreach programs in developing regions. His passion remained unwavering, and he was more committed than ever to making sure that no young dreamer was left behind. One day, Maxwell had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Adebayo, a former engineer turned mentor from Nigeria who had a reputation for empowering youth through technology workshops. They discussed plans to collaborate on new Green Bytes projects that would combine renewable energy and coding workshops to help communities build sustainable, eco-friendly solutions. Maxwell's heart raced at the thought of young minds harnessing their knowledge to create technologies that could fight climate change and improve their daily lives. The ripple effect of his work was becoming clearer. With every partnership, every workshop, and every project that was completed, the world became a little smaller, a little brighter. Young people were seeing themselves not just as players, but as creators, problem solvers, and visionaries. Maxwell realized that he was no longer just a gamer. He was a pioneer of a new world where technology and dreams coalesced into a better, more connected future. He glanced out at the horizon, the city lights twinkling like stars below him, and whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." Despite his expanding global influence, Maxwell felt the pull of home growing stronger. There was an ache in his heart for the simple days when life was about love, family, and dreams carved out in quiet moments. It was time for a visit, a journey to reconnect with his roots and remind himself why he had embarked on this path in the first place. So, with the blessings of his team and a few weeks carved out in his schedule, he returned to Kingston, the city that had shaped him. The city welcomed him with the familiar sounds of reggae drifting through the air and the warm smell of jerk chicken from roadside vendors. As he walked down the streets that once felt too narrow for his dreams, he realized how much he had grown, not just in stature but in spirit. His journey had made him a leader, a mentor, and an inspiration to those who felt trapped in the same small spaces he had once known. His first stop was the local community center, now thriving thanks to the donations from tech roots and partnerships that Maxwell had forged over the years. The place was filled with kids huddled around computers, their faces lit with curiosity as they learned to code, create, and dream. The center director, Ms. Lopez, waved him over. "Maxwell, it's good to see you. The kids here would love to meet you." As Maxwell approached, a young girl with braids and a wide grin piped up. "Are you the one who made Tech Roots?" The room quieted as all eyes turned to him, waiting for his reply. Maxwell nodded and stepped forward, feeling a swell of pride. "Yes, but I'm just one part of this family," he said, motioning to the kids around him. "You're the ones who make it special." That day, Maxwell held impromptu workshops, sharing his journey and answering questions. He spoke of hard work, setbacks, and victories, emphasizing that while he had made mistakes, he had never stopped moving forward. By the end of the afternoon, the room was filled with the chatter of inspired voices, young ones dreaming up their projects and older teens planning ideas that could transform their communities. His visit didn't stop there. He met with his old teachers, reminiscing about school days and discussing how technology had transformed education. His former gaming rival, Trevor, now a software developer, shared stories of the late nights they had spent debating game strategies. The two laughed, acknowledging how their passion for gaming had set them on a path neither could have predicted. But the most special moment came when Maxwell visited his childhood home. It was a modest, cozy space filled with memories. His mother sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. Maxwell stood in front of her, the weight of the years and achievements bearing down on him. "I'm home, Mama," he said, his voice thick with emotion. She reached out and took his hand. "I know you are, son. And I'm proud. More proud than you'll ever know." As the stars began to sprinkle the dark sky, Maxwell realized that home wasn't just a place. It was the people who believed in you, the dreams you held close, and the journey that led you back to where it all began. And for him, the journey wasn't over. It was just taking a new, more meaningful direction. Maxwell's time back in Kingston had re-energized him, sparking new ideas and a deeper sense of purpose. It was more than nostalgia. It was a reminder of why he started Tech Roots in the first place, to change lives and empower those who needed it most. The visit had given him fresh insight, and he knew it was time to take Tech Roots to the next level with projects that focused on sustainable development and environmental education. He sat down with Dr. Simone Clark and other core members of his team in Arcane Warriors conference room, the whiteboard behind him filled with half-written plans and sketches. We've shown the world that technology can build dreams, but now it's time to show them how it can protect the planet, he said, pointing at the word sustainability on the board. I want to launch a global initiative called Green Innovators, a program that pairs young tech geniuses with environmental experts to create solutions that help communities adapt to climate change. Dr. Clark's eyes widened with excitement. It's ambitious, Maxwell, but I believe in it. Our students will learn how to harness their tech skills for real-world environmental solutions, from solar-powered water purifiers to coding games that teach eco-friendly practices. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning and outreach. Maxwell reached out to environmental organizations, technology firms, and educational institutions, building partnerships that spanned continents. He secured grants and funding that would allow green innovators to provide mentorships, workshops, and eco-innovation grants for the best ideas. When the launch event arrived, it was held in a grand hall that was equipped with virtual screens showing satellite images of different parts of the world. The room was filled with innovators, students, environmentalists, and media. Maxwell spoke with the same passion that had become his trademark. Our planet is our home, but it's also our shared responsibility. Green Innovators is more than a project, it's a call to action. We need to be the architects of our future, not just the inhabitants. He shared stories from the Tech Roots community about young innovators who had already started thinking about solutions. There was Talia, a 15-year-old from Ghana who developed an app that educated users on composting and reducing waste. And Hassan, a 17-year-old from Indonesia, who was working on a project that used AI to detect and monitor deforestation. The audience watched in awe, and Maxwell knew that this was more than just an event. It was a movement in the making. As he wrapped up his speech, the room erupted in applause, and a sense of unity washed over him. He realized that his journey had led him here, to a place where technology met responsibility, where dreams were nurtured, and where hope for the future was not just a possibility, but a certainty. That evening, as Maxwell stood on the balcony overlooking the cityscape, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The stars above seemed brighter, as if echoing his thoughts. This was the legacy he wanted to leave behind. A world where dreams didn't just survive but thrived, where people were empowered to take action for a better tomorrow. The Green Innovators program had begun to take shape, drawing attention from influential leaders and organizations eager to support Maxwell's vision. But not all feedback was positive. Some high-profile voices in the tech industry criticized Maxwell's approach, calling it idealistic and questioning whether young innovators had the experience to tackle global environmental issues. The skepticism stung, but Maxwell refused to be deterred. He believed in the power of collaboration and the potential of the youth. He had seen firsthand what they were capable of. One afternoon, as he reviewed feedback and responses, a message from a powerful tech magazine caught his attention. It was from Tech Horizon, a publication known for its hard-hitting stories. The headline read, "Is Maxwell Grant's vision just a dream or a reality?" Maxwell sighed and leaned back in his chair, the weight of public doubt pressing down on him. The article dissected his approach, challenging the feasibility of training young people to come up with practical solutions for environmental crises. But rather than dwell on the criticism, Maxwell resolved to prove them wrong, and he knew just how to do it. The following week, Maxwell hosted a Green Innovators Summit, inviting young innovators from around the world to showcase their solutions in front of an esteemed panel of experts, including environmental scientists, tech entrepreneurs, and world leaders. The event was streamed live, bringing millions of viewers to their screens, eager to see what these young minds had come up with. The energy in the hall was electric, with excited murmurs and flashes of anticipation as each presentation began. First up was Talia from Ghana, who demonstrated her app, EcoCycle, which not only taught users about composting and waste management, but connected them to local recycling programs. The app had already been downloaded by thousands and had made a noticeable impact in reducing waste in her community. Her passionate speech and the real data behind her project captivated the audience, proving that solutions could be born from the simplest ideas when given the right support. Next was Hassan from Indonesia, who introduced an AI-driven system capable of analyzing satellite images to detect illegal deforestation. His tool had already been used by local authorities to track deforestation patterns and alert environmental activists to potential threats in real time. The audience gasped as Hassan revealed how his project had saved over 500 acres of forest in just 3 months. The panel's members exchanged looks of astonishment, recognizing the power of these young minds. As the day continued, other remarkable projects were presented, each telling a unique story of innovation and resilience. The questions and discussions that followed were fierce but fair, with panel members marveling at the creativity and technical acumen displayed by the participants. The tide of doubt began to shift. When the event wrapped up, Maxwell received messages from influential figures praising the initiative. The head of a major global environmental organization reached out, offering to fund an expansion of green innovators to communities in underdeveloped regions. A world-renowned tech investor sent a note saying, "Your program is a game changer." Let's talk about funding. For Maxwell, the summit had been a turning point. It proved not only to the world but to himself that young people were capable of making real change when given the resources and opportunities. It was a moment of vindication, a testament to the power of believing in others when no one else did. As he stood on the stage that evening, surrounded by the bright smiles of the young innovators, he knew that his dream had become a reality. And this was only the beginning. The success of the Green Innovators Summit was just the beginning. The world had begun to see Maxwell Grant not just as a gamer turned billionaire, but as a leader who used his platform for the greater good. The media buzzed with stories of the young innovators and the potential of their work. What started as a dream had become a global movement, and Maxwell knew that the only way forward was to keep building momentum. With the newfound recognition came new opportunities. Maxwell was invited to speak at the United Nations, presenting the progress of green innovators and advocating for global partnerships in sustainable development. He stood before an audience of world leaders, environmental experts, and advocates, his voice strong and unwavering. "We have seen that innovation knows no age, no borders. It only needs support and the courage to dream," he said. The applause that followed was thunderous, a sign that even the most skeptical had begun to see the light. But Maxwell's mission was more than just making speeches and appearing at events. He was determined to weave green innovators into the very fabric of communities around the world. He partnered with nonprofit organizations to build eco-hubs where young people could learn about sustainability and technology, and where their ideas could be nurtured and developed. He knew that true change would come from empowering the grassroots level, from inspiring kids to believe that they, too, could be part of the solution. One evening, Maxwell sat with his team at the TechRoots headquarters. The walls were lined with screens showing live feeds from the eco-hubs and innovation labs around the world. Projects were being tested in schools, and some of the most promising ideas were being scaled up for wider use. There was a palpable sense of excitement in the air. "It's working," Maxwell said, a smile spreading across his face. "This is more than just a program. This is a new way of thinking." In Kingston, the community center that had once been a small, struggling space was now the heart of a burgeoning ecosystem. It was filled daily with workshops on solar power, coding, and environmental conservation. Kids were using their afternoons to learn how to create small wind turbines and build devices that harvested rainwater. Maxwell's mother watched from the porch, her pride evident in her smile as she saw the impact of her son's work unfold before her eyes. She knew that his dreams had become more than just a game. They had turned into a legacy that would outlive him. One of the most moving moments came when Maxwell received a handwritten letter from Asha Patel, the tech leader from India. She wrote, "Your vision has inspired millions, including myself. Thank you for showing us that the future is built on unity, innovation, and hope." It was a reminder that what began as a boy with a passion for gaming had grown into a global network of dreamers and doers. Maxwell realized that the real power of green innovators lay in the unity of its people. When kids in a small Jamaican town could team up with youth in a remote village in Madagascar to share ideas and build solutions, true change was possible. And with that thought, he made a vow to himself, to continue building, not just for profit or prestige, but for a world where every child, regardless of their background, could dream and create a better future. As Maxwell looked out at the stars that night, the city below humming with life, he knew that the journey ahead would be challenging. But with a united world of young visionaries by his side, he was ready for whatever lay ahead. Maxwell's path was no longer just about proving his mother wrong or making a name for himself. It had evolved into something deeper and more meaningful. However, with the growth of green innovators came new challenges that tested his resolve. The program was expanding rapidly, and with its success, it attracted both praise and controversy. Industry rivals who had once dismissed him as an ambitious dreamer now saw green innovators as a threat. Powerful tech conglomerates were threatened by the program's potential to disrupt traditional methods of development and business. One evening, while attending a virtual strategy meeting with his senior advisors, Maxwell addressed a looming issue. "The program's impact is undeniable, but we're at a tipping point," he said, his voice resolute. "We need to find a balance between growth and sustainability without falling prey to those who want to see us fail." The room fell silent as everyone weighed the implications. They knew that moving forward would require caution, diplomacy, and a willingness to outmaneuver those who would exploit their success for their own gain. To bolster green innovators' influence and to protect it from external threats, Maxwell decided to partner with global organizations that supported tech-based solutions for sustainable development. He reached out to tech giants and environmental coalitions, proposing a coalition that would focus on both innovation and equity. The idea was met with mixed reactions. Some companies were eager to collaborate, while others were wary of Maxwell's growing power. One of his biggest supporters was Eva Morales, the head of a renowned environmental organization in Latin America. "We see this as the future," Eva said during their first meeting. "You're not just building technology, you're changing the mindset of an entire generation." Eva's endorsement brought a level of credibility that helped offset skepticism from other powerful entities. Together, they launched a new initiative called Ecotech Partnerships, which united tech experts, environmentalists, and young innovators to tackle issues such as clean water access, deforestation, and energy poverty. But it wasn't just about making new partnerships. Maxwell had to ensure that green innovators stayed true to its roots. He didn't want it to become an industry where profits overshadowed progress. To keep the program on track, he began holding monthly webinars, bringing young innovators together to share challenges, celebrate breakthroughs, and brainstorm new ideas. It became a forum not just for learning, but for keeping the spirit of community alive. Despite all the forward momentum, there were moments of doubt. One night, Maxwell found himself pacing in his office, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "You can't do this alone, Max." He sat down and stared out at the moonlit city, taking a deep breath. He knew she was right. The work ahead would require not just his vision, but the collective effort of a world that believed in change. Suddenly, a notification flashed on his screen. It was from Talia, who had been working tirelessly on expanding her EcoCycle app to include educational modules in local schools. "Maxwell," she wrote, "we just hit 100,000 downloads, and we're getting requests to expand into more communities. The kids are leading the charge, and it's all thanks to green innovators." A smile broke across Maxwell's face. He knew the road ahead would be tough, but seeing the passion and dedication of these young leaders reminded him of why he started. They were the future, and with their energy and ideas, nothing was impossible. As green innovators continued to expand, so did the scope of its challenges. Maxwell found himself navigating a labyrinth of competing interests and alliances, each with its own agenda. The program was at a pivotal point where it could either soar to greater heights or succumb to internal and external pressures. One of the biggest challenges came in the form of a powerful, secretive tech conglomerate known as Orion Global, which had been watching Maxwell's initiative closely. They had recently launched their own environmental program, EcoFuture, but it lacked the personal touch and community-driven focus that Maxwell had pioneered. The first sign that Orion Global was moving against green innovators came when an anonymous whistleblower sent Maxwell a detailed report. The document outlined how Orion Global had been using aggressive tactics to recruit top talents from competing organizations and poaching influential figures who had been instrumental to green innovators' success. The whistleblower claimed that their plan involved leveraging their vast resources to create a monopoly in the field of tech-driven environmental solutions. Maxwell knew that this was more than just a challenge to his reputation. It was an existential threat to the principles of green innovators. He gathered his core team, including Dr. Simone Clark, Eva Morales, and Hassan, who had become a trusted confidant. If Orion Global succeeds in taking over, all of the innovation and opportunities we've built could be used for profit instead of progress, Maxwell said, his tone sharp with urgency. Eva, who had been working with organizations across Latin America, leaned forward. "They're not just taking talent. They're trying to co-opt the narrative. We need to remind the world why green innovators is different. It's not just about the projects, It's about the people, the communities, and the lives we're touching. Dr. Clark nodded, her expression serious. We've always stayed true to our mission, and that's what sets us apart. It's time to show everyone that Green Innovators is more than a brand. It's a movement. We need a campaign that puts our vision and our people front and center. With a new sense of urgency, Maxwell initiated a campaign called Voices of Change, which aimed to put the young innovators in the spotlight. He reached out to media outlets, global influencers, and grassroots organizations to share stories about the communities they had transformed, the obstacles they had overcome, and the innovative solutions they had created. He knew that Orion Global might have the financial muscle, but Green Innovators had something even more powerful, an authentic community bound by shared goals and genuine passion. As the campaign launched, Maxwell felt a surge of pride watching stories of young changemakers go viral. There was Jamal, who created a low-cost water filtration system for rural communities in the Caribbean. Anna, a teenager from Brazil who built a program that educated local farmers on sustainable crop rotation methods. And Li Wei, an engineering prodigy from China who designed a portable wind turbine that could power small households. But the battle wasn't over. A week into the campaign, Orion Global hit back, issuing a press release that accused Green Innovators of failing to scale its solutions and questioned the efficacy of the young participants' projects. The response from Maxwell and his team was immediate. They released a series of in-depth documentaries showcasing Green Innovators' most impactful projects and the real stories behind them. The response from the public was overwhelming, with millions voicing their support on social media and petitions flooding in from around the world to advocate for transparency and fairness. The battle for the soul of environmental innovation had begun, and Maxwell knew this was only the start of a larger war. But with each passing day, it became clearer that Green Innovators had something that no corporation could buy: the trust and hope of a generation eager for change. The fierce battle between Green Innovators and Orion Global reached new heights as the global community became more invested in the outcome. The strength of Maxwell's campaign, Voices of Change, had not only ignited hope but also solidified the support of influential figures who shared his belief that sustainable development should not be monopolized by corporate interests. It was during this period of intense rivalry that Maxwell received an unexpected message that would change the course of Green Innovators. The message came from an unlikely source: Elena Santiago, the enigmatic CEO of Verde Tech, a company known for pioneering breakthroughs in renewable energy and eco-friendly technology. She was a formidable force in the environmental tech industry, admired for her brilliance but feared for her competitive edge. Rumors had long circulated that she was a shrewd, cutthroat executive who would stop at nothing to ensure her company's dominance. But Elena's message was clear: I want to meet. There's something we need to talk about. Maxwell's team was cautious. They knew that Elena's involvement could be either an opportunity or a manipulation. Ava, ever the diplomat, leaned over and whispered, "If we do this, we need to make sure we're prepared." Elena plays chess, not checkers. After much deliberation, Maxwell agreed to meet her. The meeting was set in a sleek, glass-walled boardroom on the top floor of Verde Tech's towering headquarters. When Maxwell walked in, Elena stood at the window, staring out at the city skyline. She turned and extended her hand, her gaze steady. "You've stirred up quite a storm, Maxwell. But it's not just noise. It's proof that people want change, and we're both after the same thing," she said. The air was tense as Maxwell took her hand. "If that's true, then why reach out to me?" he asked, leaning forward. Elena's eyes narrowed, and she sat down. Orion Global is growing too powerful, and their focus is profit, not progress. We need to show the world that sustainability is bigger than one corporation's agenda. I believe that together, we can build something that not only disrupts the status quo, but ensures that innovation serves people, not just shareholders. Maxwell was taken aback. He had expected a power play, not an offer of partnership. He glanced at his team, who were equally surprised. Dr. Clark broke the silence. "We need more than just an alliance. We need to make sure that Green Innovators stays true to its mission. Can we trust you, Elena?" Elena leaned back, her smile almost imperceptible. "Trust is earned, not given. Let's start by proving that we can make a difference, together." Over the next few weeks, Maxwell and Elena worked behind the scenes, strategizing how to leverage their combined resources and influence. Verde Tech brought cutting-edge technology and research expertise, while Green Innovators offered grassroots connections, young talent, and a commitment to sustainability that resonated with communities worldwide. They launched a pilot project called Future Forward, an initiative aimed at integrating technology with community-led environmental efforts. The project was launched with great fanfare, with Maxwell and Elena addressing a global audience via a live broadcast. They spoke of their shared vision for a future where young innovators and seasoned experts worked side by side, where the environment was prioritized, and where change was not just a lofty ideal, but an achievable reality. The world listened, and the response was overwhelming. People who had been on the fence now rallied behind green innovators, inspired by the newfound partnership. For Maxwell, the alliance with Verde Tech was a sign that change was possible even when the odds seemed stacked against him. But more than that, it was a reminder that in the fight for a better future, there were still allies worth trusting. As he looked out over the city that night, stars shining bright above, he knew that together, they could rewrite the rules and show the world what it truly meant to build a sustainable future. The Future Forward initiative was more than just a collaboration between Maxwell's green innovators and Elena's Verde Tech. It became a catalyst for a worldwide movement. Communities across the globe eagerly signed up to take part, with local leaders, students, and environmental activists coming together to participate. The project's main goal was to implement sustainable, tech-driven solutions that empowered local communities to address their own unique environmental challenges. It started with pilot programs in select cities. Solar panels that provided clean energy for rural villages, water-purifying devices that used nanotechnology, and smart sensors that helped manage waste more efficiently. The world watched in awe as communities once considered powerless were now taking charge of their destinies. The story of green innovators and Verde Tech became the subject of documentaries, school curricula, and inspiring TED Talks. Young innovators were celebrated as heroes, and stories of their resilience and ingenuity flooded social media. Maxwell was asked to join panels and interview shows where he shared his journey from gaming prodigy to global sustainability leader. Yet, despite the praise and recognition, Maxwell remained humble, reminding everyone that it was the collective efforts of millions that drove the movement forward. However, not everything was smooth sailing. As green innovators and Verde Tech grew, their success attracted more attention, and not all of it was positive. Powerful industry players, threatened by the shift in public opinion, began lobbying against them, trying to discredit their efforts. Orion Global continued its relentless campaign, funding smear tactics that questioned the effectiveness of the Future Forward initiative and accused the program of undermining traditional industries. One evening, Maxwell found himself at a dinner meeting with Ava and Elena. The table was lined with plates of food that had barely been touched, as the conversation had become more urgent. "We need to act fast," Elena said, her voice strained. "They're trying to sow doubt about our credibility. We need something that will show, without a doubt, what green innovators can do." Maxwell nodded, thinking of the stories he had heard from around the world. There was Mina, a young girl in Nigeria who created an app to help farmers predict the weather and maximize their yields, and Raj, an engineering student from India who designed an affordable, modular solar power system that could be replicated across rural areas. They were the real testament to the initiative's success. "Let's launch the Global Impact Challenge," Maxwell suggested, his eyes lighting up with determination. "We'll showcase the most promising projects from every corner of the world and share them live. Let people see the tangible results. Hear the stories straight from the innovators themselves." Ava smiled, her expression brightening with newfound hope. "That's perfect. It'll remind the world that change isn't just a possibility. It's happening right now." The announcement of the Global Impact Challenge sent shockwaves through the media. This event would be different from anything that had come before it. It wasn't just another showcase. It was a moment that would put a face to every project, a voice to every young innovator, and a reason for every skeptic to take notice. The world was about to witness the true power of a movement rooted in unity and hope. As the weeks passed and the event date drew near, Maxwell felt a surge of anticipation and pride. He knew that the outcome of the challenge could change the perception of green innovators forever, showing the world that the future was not only in the hands of corporations and powerful interests, but also in the hearts and minds of people willing to dream, create, and fight for a better tomorrow. The day of the Global Impact Challenge arrived, and the buzz surrounding it was palpable. The event was broadcasted live across multiple platforms, from traditional TV channels to social media streams. Maxwell stood at the heart of the virtual stage, flanked by Elena, Ava, and Dr. Clark. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation. This wasn't just a showcase. It was a declaration that change had come, and it was unstoppable. The first presentation came from Mina, the young innovator from Nigeria. The screen flickered to life, revealing her face and the modest classroom she had turned into her laboratory. "I used to watch my parents struggle during droughts," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "With the help of green innovators and Verde Tech, I built an app that predicts weather patterns and helps farmers make better decisions for their crops." The screen switched to a video of farmers using Mina's app in the fields, their faces lighting up as they saw the rain clouds gathering in the distance. The footage was moving, a reminder that technology, when used right, could bring hope where it was needed most. The challenge showcased a wave of ingenuity from young minds around the world. There was Raj from India, who spoke about his modular solar system. "This isn't just about power," he said, showing a group of villagers gathering under the light of his invention. "It's about independence. Every household should have the power to shine on its own." The testimonials poured in, from farmers whose crops thrived thanks to new irrigation methods to urban communities that reduced their carbon footprint with the help of eco-friendly waste management solutions. The momentum continued, each story more powerful than the last. Green Innovators was no longer just an initiative. It had become a global movement. But as the final presentation approached, the tension grew. Orion Global had been silent in the lead-up to the event, but rumors swirled that they were planning a major statement to counteract the challenge. Maxwell took a deep breath as he prepared for the last segment. "Finally," he said, addressing the live audience, "we hear from Li Wei, an engineering prodigy from China who revolutionized energy distribution in rural areas." The young innovator appeared on the screen, his wide smile illuminated by the glow of his small wind turbines, which spun gracefully in the background. "My goal was simple," Li Wei said. "To make energy available to everyone, no matter where they live. And I couldn't have done it without Green Innovators and Verde Tech believing in my dream." The applause was deafening, a sound that echoed across the globe. The stories resonated, their impact clear in the hundreds of thousands of messages flooding in from viewers. The event had done more than prove the value of Green Innovators. It had sparked a sense of urgency in every corner of the world. But just as Maxwell felt a wave of relief wash over him, a sharp notification broke through his thoughts. A breaking news alert flashed across his screen. Orion Global issues a statement denouncing the Global Impact Challenge as propaganda and accuses it of spreading misinformation. The headline sent a chill down his spine, but he was ready. Ava turned to him, eyes narrowed with resolve. "They're trying to discredit us, but we've already won." Maxwell's smile was small but fierce. "They haven't seen anything yet." The fight for the future was far from over. But now, with the world watching and voices rising, he knew they had already changed the game. And this was just the beginning. The Global Impact Challenge had sent shockwaves through the world, showcasing the true power of innovation and unity. But as predicted, Orion Global was not one to back down. The very next day, a media storm erupted as their statement accusing Green Innovators of spreading misinformation made headlines. They claimed that the featured projects were exaggerated or not scalable, and that the movement was a mere publicity stunt aimed at undermining established industries. Maxwell watched the news unfold, the weight of the accusations pressing down on him. He knew that this was their next battle, one of perception and truth. The challenge was to prove not only that Green Innovators was effective, but that it could withstand the scrutiny of powerful adversaries. He called an emergency meeting with Ava, Elena, Dr. Clark, and Hassan to discuss their next move. Elena leaned forward, her eyes sharp and calculating. "They're trying to shift the conversation. We need to take control and turn this narrative to our advantage." Dr. Clark nodded. "We need to showcase the impact more broadly and make sure the public understands that our focus is on community-driven, sustainable growth, not just flashy tech." Ava, who had been spearheading Green Innovators' outreach in Latin America, spoke up. "I've been coordinating with several local governments that have adopted our technology. We should present real data showing how these solutions have improved lives, with testimonials from the people who matter most." Maxwell's eyes lit up as the team brainstormed ideas. He suggested they launch a series of in-depth impact reports that combined real data, video interviews, and infographics. The first report, which would be released within days, would focus on Mina's app in Nigeria and Raja's solar system in India. It would include first-hand accounts from farmers, students, and local leaders who had seen their lives transformed. Elena suggested expanding the reach through an online summit where innovators from all over the world could present their stories live. It would be interactive, allowing people to ask questions and engage with the young minds leading the charge. We'll show the world that Green Innovators isn't just a campaign. It's a network, a movement that's growing stronger every day. The team worked tirelessly, filming interviews, compiling data, and setting up the online summit. The release of the impact reports was met with a wave of support, with hashtags like #TrueInnovation and #VoicesOfChange trending globally. Videos of farmers speaking about their newfound independence went viral, and powerful images of children studying under solar-powered lamps were shared millions of times. The online summit was a resounding success, with millions of viewers tuning in and experts from various fields praising the initiative's potential. The tide began to shift as public opinion leaned in favor of Green Innovators, and even some influential voices within the tech world started to speak out against Orion Global's aggressive tactics. The company's stock prices took a noticeable dip as investors grew wary of its reputation. It was clear that Green Innovators had struck a nerve, but Maxwell knew this wasn't the end. Orion Global would come back stronger, and the fight would continue. But for now, Maxwell allowed himself a moment to savor the progress. He looked at the team gathered around him, their faces lit with hope and determination. They had fought and won a small battle, but the war for the future was far from over. And as long as they stayed true to their vision, there was no force that could stop them. The global response to the Global Impact Challenge was a game-changer for Green Innovators, but Maxwell knew that the momentum needed to be sustained. The world was waking up to the idea that real, grassroots change was possible, but there was still so much work to do. Orion Global was only getting stronger, its influence reaching into boardrooms, legislatures, and media outlets. Maxwell needed a plan that would put them on the defensive and cement Green Innovators' position as the leading force in sustainable innovation. He called for an emergency strategy meeting with his core team, including Elena, Ava, Dr. Clark, Hassan, and even a few key representatives from communities that had benefited from their work. The room buzzed with the energy of possibility as they brainstormed ways to build on their recent success and amplify their impact. We need to leverage the stories we've shared and mobilize even more communities to get involved, Maxwell said, looking at his team with renewed determination. Ava nodded, her mind already racing with ideas. We can initiate a Green Leaders initiative that trains young people in communities worldwide to become sustainability advocates. This would show that Green Innovators is more than just a movement. It's a global network of changemakers. Dr. Clark added, and we can partner with universities to create a sustainability mentorship program, where students work alongside experts to develop new solutions and bring them back to their communities. It's about fostering knowledge and fostering leadership. Elena's eyes gleamed as she spoke up. And we need to show that we're not just empowering individuals, but entire industries. We can create workshops for local entrepreneurs to learn how to integrate sustainable practices into their businesses. That way, they'll see that it's not only good for the planet, but also good for their livelihoods. Maxwell's excitement grew as the ideas piled up. It was a testament to how far they had come since the early days when it was just him, gaming, and the seed of a dream. He glanced at his team, the faces that had become his family. Together, they had turned a vision into a reality, and together, they would ensure its survival. The meeting ended with a solid plan of action. The Green Leaders Initiative would launch in a month, starting in areas where Green Innovators had already made a significant impact. The Sustainability Mentorship Program was given a 2-month timeline to be implemented in partnership with major universities. And the workshops for entrepreneurs would begin as a pilot program in 3 major cities, known for their entrepreneurial spirit. News of these initiatives spread rapidly, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. International media outlets, who had been critical of Maxwell's approach in the past, were now eager to cover these stories. Influencers and content creators joined the movement, eager to share the message that Green Innovators was not just changing the narrative, but rewriting the rules entirely. But just as things seemed to be going smoothly, an urgent message arrived from Ava. She was out in the field in Colombia, working on a new project to teach locals sustainable farming methods, and she was calling with news that made Maxwell's blood run cold. "Maxwell, you need to see this." Orion Global is moving faster than we thought. They've started a campaign that's targeting our grassroots leaders. They're trying to sow distrust and create confusion. Maxwell's jaw clenched, but he felt a surge of resolve. Let them try, he said, looking out at the city below him, lights twinkling as if in agreement. We've proven that our strength is in unity, and nothing they do can take that away from us. The fight was far from over, but now, Maxwell knew that green innovators had the will, the people, and the vision to outlast any obstacle. The news from Ava in Colombia had sent a tremor of urgency through Maxwell's team. Orion Global's new campaign was more aggressive than anything they had faced before. This time, they were not just planting seeds of doubt, they were spreading outright falsehoods. Reports came in that their operatives were visiting villages and cities where green innovators had implemented projects, questioning the legitimacy of their work and attempting to convince people that Orion Global's alternative solutions were more reliable. Maxwell knew it was time to step up the game. He convened an emergency call with Elena, Ava, Dr. Clark, and Hassan. The room was charged with a mixture of concern and determination as they discussed how to counteract the misinformation. We've built our movement on transparency and trust, Elena said, leaning forward with intensity. We can't let them take that away from us. Ava chimed in, her voice firm. We need to take our storytelling to the next level. Let people see the impact firsthand. We should organize a global open day event where community leaders can showcase their successes, speak directly to the world, and dispel any doubt about the effectiveness of our projects. Dr. Clark nodded, eyes glistening with agreement. And let's harness the power of data. We have the metrics, the evidence of lives changed and communities uplifted. Let's compile a truth report with comprehensive data, testimonials, and case studies that will be impossible to disprove. Maxwell's heart pounded with urgency and excitement. And let's make sure we've got powerful voices backing us up. Celebrities, environmentalists, thought leaders. We need them on our side, lending their credibility to what we're doing. The team worked around the clock. They contacted prominent figures who had already voiced support for green innovators, including renowned environmental scientists, global influencers, and even world leaders who had witnessed the movement's success firsthand. The Open Day event was promoted through every channel available, with teasers showing glimpses of powerful stories and hopeful messages. When the day of the Open Day arrived, it was unlike anything the world had seen. From dawn to dusk, the event streamed live, connecting viewers from every corner of the planet. In Colombia, Ava stood at a field where sustainable farming had revitalized the community, speaking with local farmers who shared their stories of renewed hope. In India, Raja's solar-powered village came alive as children played and families gathered under the light of his creations. And in Nigeria, Mina demonstrated her weather predicting app, revealing how farmers were now able to thrive even in the most unpredictable conditions. Maxwell's own segment was the most anticipated. He stood in front of a crowd that included locals, media, and supporters from around the world. This isn't just about technology or innovation, he said, his voice steady and strong. It's about people, real people who dared to believe in a better future. We didn't create this alone. We created it together. The Truth Report was unveiled alongside the event, revealing data that showed the tangible effects of green innovators' initiatives. A 40% increase in agricultural yields in participating areas, a 60% drop in energy poverty in the first pilot communities, and testimonials from more than 10,000 people who said they felt their lives had been changed. Despite Orion Global's best efforts to discredit the event, they were met with a growing movement that refused to be silenced. The public outpouring of support for green innovators was overwhelming. The hashtag #GreenForChange trended for days, and stories of real people breaking free from poverty and dependency flooded social media. Maxwell knew that Orion Global would regroup and try again. They would continue to throw challenges their way. But with the momentum of this event behind them, Maxwell felt confident that Green Innovators was no longer just a movement. It was a force to be reckoned with, and they were ready for whatever came next. The Open Day event had done more than boost Maxwell's confidence. It had ignited a fire within communities around the world. From small villages in Africa to bustling cities in Europe, the message of Green Innovators spread like wildfire. People saw it not as a distant dream, but as a tangible reality they could reach out and touch. The movement had gained not just followers but leaders, each one taking their piece of the vision and running with it. However, Orion Global was not one to be outmaneuvered so easily. Maxwell knew that the corporation was recalibrating its strategy. The question was, would they play dirty or try to adapt to the new rules of the game? News came in that Orion Global was now partnering with influential governments and industry titans to create their version of a sustainable initiative, a project meant to directly compete with green innovators. They dubbed it Ecotech Alliance, promising sleek, efficient, and highly profitable solutions that could scale up quickly. Maxwell knew that profits alone wouldn't win the hearts of people, but he also knew that the competition would be fierce. To stay ahead, he decided it was time for green innovators to strengthen its alliances and grow its network. He called in Elena, Ava, and Dr. Clark for another high-stakes strategy meeting. Elena, we need to form partnerships with local businesses, not just NGOs and governments. The more stakeholders we have, the stronger our foundation will be, Maxwell said, scanning the faces of his team. Ava, I want you to connect with influential community leaders. We need their voices, their credibility. Dr. Clark nodded. And we need a plan to counteract Orion Global's Ecotech Alliance. We'll need data, success stories, and perhaps some help from our supporters in the tech and environmental spheres. The next month became a whirlwind of activity. Ava and Elena crisscrossed continents, meeting with local leaders and establishing partnerships with organizations that could provide boots-on-the-ground support. They secured funding from eco-conscious investors who believed in the mission and saw green innovators as a profitable venture with ethical roots. Dr. Clark worked tirelessly on a comprehensive report that showcased how green innovators' solutions were not only effective, but also affordable and sustainable. Meanwhile, Maxwell's focus was on rallying the younger generation. He launched a new initiative called Green Pioneers, a platform for young innovators to propose and execute their sustainable projects under the umbrella of green innovators. The idea was simple: empower young people to make a difference and showcase the limitless potential of fresh ideas. The response was astounding. Students from every corner of the globe applied, eager to bring their visions to life. The results were evident within weeks. Success stories started pouring in. A group of students in the Philippines developed a low-cost water filtration system that could be distributed to rural communities, and a team in Brazil created a mobile app that helped farmers find and collaborate with local buyers to sell their organic produce directly. As the world took notice, even the most skeptical voices began to shift. Reports from independent observers confirmed that Green Innovators' approach was outperforming Orion Global's Ecotech Alliance in both effectiveness and community support. The tide was turning, but Maxwell knew the battle wasn't over. Orion Global would strike again, and their next move was likely to be their most formidable yet. But for now, Maxwell allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. He stood at the window of his office, overlooking a city alive with lights and movement. The future was uncertain, but he had come a long way from the boy who once spent his days gaming in solitude. Now, he was part of a movement that changed lives, and that was a win in itself. Despite the success of the Green Innovators movement, a shadow loomed over Maxwell's accomplishments. The battle against Orion Global was escalating, and the corporation was taking a more covert, strategic approach. Their new tactic was insidious, using propaganda and fear-mongering to create doubt and hesitation among supporters. Reports started to emerge about disgruntled local leaders who were being approached and offered incentives to join Orion Global's Ecotech Alliance. Some spoke of whispered promises of funding and political power, others of personal gain that could not be ignored. Maxwell sensed that this would be one of the biggest challenges yet, not just the fight against an opponent with more resources, but the fight to maintain the integrity of their movement. Trust was the most valuable asset Green Innovators had, and it was under threat. He called a meeting with his team, each member's face shadowed with worry and resolve. Elena, we've been hearing reports that some of our local leaders are being approached by Orion Global, Maxwell said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. We need to strengthen our ties with them. Make it clear that this movement isn't about money, power, or prestige. It's about people, about building a better future. Elena nodded, already scribbling notes. We can host a global leadership summit, a gathering of community leaders and innovators to share stories and reaffirm their commitment to the movement. We'll make it clear that Green Innovators is built on trust, unity, and real progress. Dr. Clark, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. And we can include workshops on how to recognize and resist manipulation tactics. If we empower leaders with the knowledge to see through deception, they'll be more resilient to Orion Global's strategies. Ava's eyes flashed with determination. We also need to make sure our success stories are visible and authentic. People need to see the true impact Green Innovators has had. We should highlight how this movement has given power back to the people, not just with words but with actions. With the team's ideas in motion, Maxwell began putting together a comprehensive plan for a global leadership summit, which would be hosted online and in person in key locations. They invited influential figures in the environmental and tech fields, community leaders from around the world, and most importantly, the people who had first-hand experience with Green Innovators projects. The summit was launched with great anticipation. Over the course of several days, leaders shared stories that moved viewers to tears. Stories of a single mother in Kenya who had started a sustainable farm and now fed her entire village, or a young engineering student in Argentina who had created a low-cost wind turbine that powered an entire community. Each story was a reminder of why the movement existed in the first place. But just as the summit was reaching its peak, Orion Global made their move. A viral article began circulating, accusing Green Innovators of being a front for political manipulation and suggesting that Maxwell and his team were not acting in the best interest of the people, but in pursuit of personal glory. The article, slick and convincing, used half-truths and cherry-picked data to make their case. Maxwell knew this was a calculated attempt to divide and conquer. But instead of panicking, he turned to his team, who had gathered to watch the article's release in real time. "We knew they'd do this," he said, gripping the edge of the table. "Now we show the world who we really are. We fight the doubt with the truth." Elena raised her hand, her face determined. "Let's start by compiling a series of video testimonies from the very people Orion Global is trying to discredit. Let's show the world that the change we create is real, and it's happening now." Ava stood, her eyes sharp. "And I'll make sure the stories are shared far and wide, with influencers and allies who know what we're about. We need the truth to drown out their noise." With their next moves already clear, Maxwell took a deep breath. He knew this was the hardest battle yet, but he was ready. The true strength of Green Innovators had always been its people, those who believed in the dream, worked for it, and lived it. It was time to let that shine brighter than ever before. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity for Maxwell and his team. With the release of Orion Global's smear article, they needed to act fast. They knew that this was a critical moment, a test not only of their resources and strategy, but also of the resolve of the Green Innovators movement itself. Elena spearheaded the campaign to counter the negative publicity. She and her team worked tirelessly to compile video testimonials from the people whose lives had been transformed by Green Innovators. They reached out to local leaders and community members, many of whom had been impacted by sustainable farming techniques, clean energy projects, and educational initiatives. One by one, these voices were captured on camera, sharing their stories of change, resilience, and newfound hope. Maxwell's role was to put a face to the movement, to remind the world why it existed. He began recording short video messages, speaking directly to the camera with a sincerity that was hard to refute. This movement isn't about fame or fortune. It's about the people who've taken control of their destinies and turned dreams into realities. It's about communities coming together to make a better future, no matter what obstacles stand in the way. Ava leveraged her network of influencers and social media champions, asking them to share the raw and unfiltered stories that resonated most. As the videos began flooding social media, hashtags like #TrueGreen and #VoicesOfChange started trending. Supporters who had witnessed firsthand the transformative work of Green Innovators came out in droves, posting their own stories and encouraging others to do the same. One evening, Maxwell sat at his desk, watching the influx of comments and shares on the campaign. The flood of positive feedback was overwhelming. There were messages from people across the globe. From a fisherman in Sri Lanka who credited Green Innovators for bringing sustainable fishing practices to his community, to a teacher in Jamaica who had used the educational resources provided to help her students develop new skills. The movement was no longer just a dream. It was a tide that could not be stopped. But even as the truth was rising, Orion Global was not standing still. Their response came in the form of a live broadcast by their CEO, Daniel Mercer. He stood in front of a polished backdrop, the branding of Orion Global looming behind him like a fortress. His words were calculated, meant to sow seeds of doubt. The world needs solutions that scale quickly and efficiently. Orion Global is proud to lead the way with our Ecotech Alliance, a program that's built for real, measurable progress. Unlike movements that promise change and deliver nothing, we're providing results. Maxwell watched the broadcast with a mix of anger and determination. The man's words were a veiled threat, a challenge to everything green innovators stood for. It was clear that Orion Global had realized the power of the movement and was trying to recast themselves as the true harbingers of change. But Maxwell had faith in the people. As he glanced at the flood of responses pouring in, he knew that their stories spoke louder than any corporate announcement. "It's time to take it up a notch," he said to Elena, who had joined him in the office. "We need to bring even more voices into this, make it impossible for them to ignore the truth." The team sprang into action, organizing a series of town halls that would be streamed live, where community leaders, innovators, and ordinary people could share their experiences, unfiltered and without moderation. The world was ready to hear the real stories, the ones that couldn't be manipulated or controlled by money or power. The war of narratives had begun in earnest, and Maxwell was ready for the fight. The first town hall event was held in a bustling community center in Nairobi, Kenya, and was broadcasted to millions worldwide. Maxwell sat in the front row, surrounded by community leaders, local farmers, and volunteers who had come to share their stories. The air was electric with anticipation. This was more than just a meeting, it was a statement. Ava was behind the scenes, coordinating the live feed, making sure the stories were reaching every corner of the globe. Dr. Clark stood by, ready to answer any technical or data-related questions that might arise. Elena stood next to Maxwell, her eyes reflecting the same mixture of hope and resolve that had driven their movement from the beginning. The first speaker was Mariama, a farmer from the outskirts of Nairobi. She had been one of the first to adopt Green Innovators' sustainable farming methods. With a confident voice, she shared how she had been able to transform her small plot of land into a thriving farm that fed not just her family, but the entire community. "I was once afraid that my children would go to bed hungry," Mariama said, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Now they go to bed with full stomachs, and they dream about a future where they can choose what they want to become, not what life has forced them to be." The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound echoing through the venue. The stories continued. A young entrepreneur in Mexico who had built a solar-powered water purification system that served entire neighborhoods, a group of students in India who had designed a low-cost irrigation system that saved farmers thousands. Each voice was a testament to the reality of what Green Innovators had made possible, a stark contrast to the hollow promises of Orion Global. As the event progressed, Maxwell noticed a shift. Comments flooded in, and not just from supporters but from people who had once been skeptical or neutral. They spoke of inspiration, of seeing hope where there had been none. The hashtag Green Voices surged in popularity, becoming a global rallying cry for truth and transparency. Then came the question and answer session. A reporter from a major international news outlet stood up, microphone in hand. "How do you respond to the accusations from Orion Global that your projects are not scalable and are only viable in small communities?" Maxwell stood up, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "Our projects don't just scale, they thrive. We focus on empowering communities to become self-sufficient, not reliant on external sources. The world has been sold the myth that only large, profit-driven organizations can bring progress. But we're proving that sustainable, community-driven progress is not just possible. It's better." The room erupted in applause. The event had been a success beyond their wildest expectations. The raw, authentic voices of real people had cut through Orion Global's propaganda like a blade. Maxwell knew this was just the beginning. More town halls were planned, in every continent and every corner of the world. They were going to take the fight to Orion Global, not with money or power, but with the undeniable truth that people, when united and empowered, could change the world. Elena leaned over to Maxwell, whispering, "We've started a revolution." Maxwell smiled, his eyes bright with the realization that they were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win, and the world was listening. The success of the first town hall event sent shockwaves across the globe. The world had seen a movement led by ordinary people creating extraordinary change, and they were no longer just passive onlookers. Maxwell watched as the message spread. Green Innovators was no longer just a dream. It was a movement that had captured the imagination of the world. But Orion Global was not done yet. Their response was swift and calculated. In the wake of the town halls, the corporation launched an aggressive media blitz, showcasing glossy advertisements that painted their ecotech alliance as the future of sustainable progress. The commercials featured sleek drones distributing solar panels, high-tech facilities that promised instant solutions, and testimonials from politicians and industry leaders who swore by Orion Global's commitment to global change. They were using a strategy that had worked for decades: the promise of quick, big solutions that were easy to digest and flashy to look at. But Maxwell knew better. He understood that the world was becoming fatigued by quick fixes and superficial promises. They wanted real, proven solutions that empowered them, not just top-down, profit-driven schemes. "Maxwell," Ava said, pointing at her tablet as she walked into his office. "Look at this." The screen showed a trending hashtag #GreenInnovatorsChange. The movement was gaining more traction than ever before, not just with everyday people, but with thought leaders and influencers in the environmental sector who had previously been neutral. There were reports that Orion Global's efforts were starting to look less like a genuine pursuit for sustainability and more like a desperate attempt to cling to power. Maxwell leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. "It's happening, Ava. People are waking up to the truth. Now we need to push this momentum further." Elena and Dr. Clark joined the conversation. "It's time for an international coalition of leaders who support our model," Elena suggested. "We need endorsements from the influential voices of change, people who stand for sustainable and equitable practices." "Agreed," Dr. Clark added, "and we need to present our results as they happen. Data, stories, and demonstrations that show our initiatives in real time. We have to make sure the world sees green innovators not just as a concept, but as the blueprint for future progress." The next week, Maxwell's team launched the Green Innovators Global Coalition, inviting leaders, celebrities, and experts from every field to join. The coalition's mission was simple: to showcase that real, scalable change was possible without sacrificing people or the environment. Members of the coalition were asked to share their stories, endorse the movement, and help dismantle the myths perpetuated by Orion Global. One evening, Maxwell received a surprising call. It was an old friend from his gaming days, now a technology mogul who had seen the campaign unfold. "Maxwell, we want to help. I've rallied a group of tech visionaries who want to contribute to this cause. We'll lend you our resources, our expertise. Let's make green innovators unstoppable." Maxwell's eyes widened as he listened. He felt a surge of hope, realizing that the tide was truly turning. The movement was no longer a battle fought in the shadows. It was a force that had emerged into the light, ready to change the world once and for all. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in months, Maxwell felt that victory was within reach. The weeks following the formation of the Green Innovators Global Coalition were a whirlwind of activity and coordination. Members from around the world worked tirelessly to push the movement to new heights. The coalition included renowned environmentalists, influential public figures, and innovative tech entrepreneurs. Together, they showcased that sustainable development could be achieved without compromising the integrity of the people or the environment. Maxwell took part in high-profile global conferences, where he shared the stage with some of the most respected voices in the world of eco-innovation. His message resonated deeply. Green Innovators was not just a program but a paradigm shift, one that proved communities, when equipped and empowered, could reshape the future. He spoke of unity and the power of collective action, drawing a stark contrast to the isolated, profit-driven model of Orion Global. Meanwhile, Ava was busy curating stories and real-time updates from around the world, amplifying the voices of those who were benefiting from Green Innovators programs. She worked with international media channels to ensure their stories were featured, bringing attention to projects that were turning the tide against poverty and environmental degradation. Social media influencers joined the movement, not just by sharing posts, but by organizing community-driven events and challenges aimed at raising awareness and support. One evening, Maxwell sat in a conference room with Elena and Dr. Clark, staring at the screen where live updates from their ongoing town halls and coalition meetings were streaming. The numbers were staggering. Millions were tuning in, sharing, and engaging. The unity that had been so elusive was now palpable, a force that grew stronger with each passing day. "Elena," Maxwell said, breaking the silence, "it's not just us anymore. This is bigger than we ever imagined. People everywhere are realizing that change isn't just a dream, it's happening. And it's happening because they're part of it." Elena nodded, a proud smile spreading across her face. Maxwell, when we first started, it was all about proving your mom wrong, right? But now look at what we've built. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about the world. Dr. Clark spoke up, his voice rich with emotion. You've proven that sustainability doesn't mean sacrifice. It means building resilience and empowering communities. And now, with the support of this coalition, we can truly begin to reshape the narrative. The next day, a major breakthrough came. Orion Global announced a massive initiative, an environmentally friendly urban project aimed at showcasing their commitment to sustainable practices. While it seemed like a victory, Maxwell knew it was a desperate attempt to sway public opinion. The coalition had already exposed the real measure of green innovators, a global force that was about people, not profits. They were not just talking change, they were living it. Maxwell felt a surge of hope and resolve. With the coalition's momentum and the support of millions behind them, it was time to make sure the world knew that green innovators was the future. He looked at Elena and Dr. Clark. The real work begins now. We need to make sure every community in every corner of the world knows that they're not just spectators in this story. They're the authors. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of hope, Maxwell knew that the fight was not over, but the victory was already written in the hearts of those who believed. It was a victory that would resonate through generations. The day Green Innovators finally secured its place as a global leader was a day Maxwell would never forget. It came not as a grand announcement or a victory parade, but as the quiet realization that their message had become the heartbeat of a worldwide movement. Communities in every continent were now collaborating, sharing resources, and growing stronger together. People from all walks of life had discovered that when they united, they were an unstoppable force. Maxwell stood at the center of the newly built Green Innovators Global Hub, a facility that served as both a symbol of success and a catalyst for future endeavors. This hub was more than just a physical space. It was a beacon of hope and a place where leaders, dreamers, and doers could come together to design and execute the next wave of change. Here, sustainability was no longer a distant ideal. It was a tangible reality. He glanced at Elena, who was busy coordinating a new initiative called Green Connect, aimed at pairing communities with tech experts who could help them create their own self-sufficient solutions. Dr. Clark was in the corner, reviewing a report on the incredible impacts the coalition had made on global poverty and environmental resilience. Ava had set up an interactive wall showing real-time feedback from communities participating in various programs, from new schools powered by solar energy in rural villages to eco-friendly housing developments that were changing lives. The moment was bittersweet for Maxwell. He thought of his mother, who had once doubted his dreams, warning him that gaming and innovation were just distractions. But now, as he looked at the massive shift that had taken place, he knew she would be proud. He imagined her sitting at home, hearing about the changes that Green Innovators had made and seeing the world's perception of him shift from a boy who played games to a man who had transformed the future. The global spotlight was on Green Innovators, but Maxwell knew that the true power of the movement was not in recognition or accolades. It was in the stories of children going to school with bright futures, farmers with bountiful harvests, and families with clean water and better health. It was in the voices of people who, once voiceless, now had the means to create their own destinies. Ava walked up to Maxwell, her eyes bright with excitement. The next step is to bring this model to the cities that need it most. We've proven that the power of local leadership can change the world. Maxwell nodded, feeling a surge of pride. Yes, and we'll keep going until every corner of the world is empowered to write their own story of progress. This is just the beginning. Dr. Clark stepped forward, holding a tablet displaying the latest news update. Green Innovators was now a household name, synonymous with community, sustainability, and empowerment. The headline read, "The Age of Empowerment: How Green Innovators Changed the World." Maxwell felt a warmth in his chest as he looked out the large glass windows, where children played in the sun, and workers in green uniforms tended to gardens full of food and life. This was more than just a victory, it was a new dawn. The world was not just surviving, it was thriving. And in that moment, Maxwell knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, Green Innovators would stand strong. An enduring reminder that the greatest power lies in the unity of people who dare to dream, believe, and act.